Welcome to WanaxTV. This evening, we're talking about history of the Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts in the Late Bronze Age. Before we begin, I'd like to thank to everybody who's joining us live. This was short notice, so people are still coming in. We just begun. I'd like to thank to all of the channel subscribers as well as the Patreons and YouTube members. And before we begin, a few updates on how we're doing regarding the content on the channel moving forward in the near future. We are working on the massive, on a huge Etruscan civilization documentary. It's going to be 2 hours long, something that I've been talking about for months now. It's been in works for close to 2 years, almost 2 years right now, and the documentary will cover the complete history of the Etruscans, including their identity, their language, their origins, their early history, mythological history, and then moving to the historical times, their early rulers, as recorded by the ancient Greeks, their emergence of the Etruscan alphabet based on the Greek alphabet, their relations with the Greeks, with the Phoenicians, with other peoples from Italy, of course, their relations with Romans, and their conflicts with many of these peoples, their eventual decline and fall at the hands of the Roman Republic. We'll go through everything. We It will be the best and the best quality video that we have produced since the beginning of of WanaxTV channel. So that's something that's planned to be completed in the second half of next month, and that's the thing that's been holding up our regular content, which is why we resorted to these live episodes, because they require less preparation and they allow me to work on the Etruscan documentary in the meantime. Also, recently we had gotten a few new members. We have Scott Johnson, Vladimir Yelisavchich, and Dmitro Mikin as new YouTube members, and we have Hal Porter as a new Patreon member. Shout out to them. And also, big shout out to uh, History with Sai. He's been with this channel from the very beginning. Make sure to check his video that he recently put on, which is about ancient Egypt, before the pharaohs and the pyramids, the people and cultures of pre-dynastic Egypt. So make sure to check him out. I'm sure that many of you, if not most of you, are already subscribed to History with Sai. So he's a great friend of the channel. And also, shout out to Thomas Wicello, who's a narrator for our upcoming Etruscan documentary. You can check his channel. You can see his channel on the screen right now. You can check his work. And if you like what you see, subscribe to him as well. With that being said, we will slowly move to the segments which we're going to talk about tonight, and this video is a big one. This episode is a deep dive. It's going to be heavy duty. As you see, I have 10 segments for you here. We're going to go through the details from the background of the conflict, the Mycenaean conquest of Crete and expansion to Asia Minor, the Hittite expansion to Western Anatolia, the Indictment of Madduwatta, which is the first instance where Mycenaeans and Hittites clashed directly, and those conflicts have been on the proxy side ever since. Really, we have fall of Arzawa, Ahhiyawan ladder, the island dispute, which where the king of Ahhiyawa voiced his concern and really protested or contested Hittite desires to expand into the Aegean Sea. Ultimately, that was prevented. We have conflict over Wilusa, one of the historical Trojan conflicts. We have Alaksandu Treaty, a treaty between the Hittite Empire and the historical city of Troy. We have the famed or infamous, however you want to call him, Piyamaradu, the ultimate anti-Hittite Anatolian warlord. There will be a lot of talk about him in this episode. We have the Milawata letter, where at the time when Mycenaean power was on the decline, especially in Anatolia. We have Trojan War and theories and possible references to the Hittites when it comes to the Trojan War. Obviously, no direct evidence. We're just going to touch on the subject a little bit. And we're going to finish the episode with the Bronze Age collapse. We have shout out to the Wanax army, and make sure to join us on Discord. Uh, for those who have Discord, make sure to join our community. We're trying to grow it over there. A lot of members, a lot of viewers have joined our Discord, so make sure to do that. Also, make sure to check WanaxTV on Patreon. You do not have to be a paid member. You can join as a free member and you can still access much of the content that is not just videos. You can access stuff like pictures from the museum, which has been provided to me recently by History with Sai. So he visited a Bronze Age Pylos related featured exhibition at the Getty Villa in LA recently, and he took some pictures of the exhibition, of the exhibits for me, and sent it to me to display it for everybody to see, for the WanaxTV viewers. So big thanks to History with Sai once again, and yes, make sure to join us on Patreon as a free member. There's a lot of content that's not just videos. Oh, we have History with Sai in the chat. Okay, so we have a special guest viewer for tonight. History with Sai is in the house. So yeah, great to see History with Sai here. I'm sure that at least 80% of WanaxTV subscribers are either subscribed or came from History with Sai to check my channel, and that's how I got them. Well, thanks to Sai. A few comments. We'll go through them at one of the breaks. After each segment, it's 10 segments. So after each segment, I will take a tiny break to take a look at the comment section, answer some questions, engaged with the chat a little bit, and then move to the next one. So Josh Gardner says, Wanax, have you watched Pete Kelly's YouTube videos? Yes, I have. And actually, when you mentioned Pete Kelly, shout out to him and his channel, and also his History Time channel, for which I have been preparing a scenario for, which will be completed within a month, but it's concerning Troy. I'm not going to talk too much about that while we're uh, shout out to History Time. Please check his channel. He's one of the biggest channels when it comes to history content that I know of, and his Bronze Age Greece Mycenaean video, which is about 6 hours long. I helped him. I contributed write a scenario and do some research. So check that video. It's a great one. It's 6 hours, so you might not be able to watch it in a single on one try. You're probably gonna have to watch and then come back to continue. All right. With that being said, it's time to start. You have seen the segments. I gave a little explanation on each and every one of them. And with that being said, let's go and talk about the background of the Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts starting from the 15th century BC. As you can see, Mycenaean Greece really emerged. It really emerged from the Middle Helladic period as at first as just one of the factors in the Aegean Sea at the time when the Minoan civilization of Crete was really the dominant power in the region. As Minoans declined, Mycenaeans expanded their power. We talked about that in some of the previous episodes. We have what is believed to be earthquakes. We had other natural disasters such as Thera eruption, which contributed to the decline of the Minoan civilization. Mycenaeans took advantage of that, expanded through the Aegean, and eventually at about 1450 BC, we have the Mycenaean conquest or Mycenaean takeover of the island of Crete, the downfall and collapse of the Minoan civilization itself. Unfortunately, there are no historical records talking about the political situation of the time. We do not know the names of the rulers who accomplished this or the names of the individuals who took part in these events. Linear A writing system, which had been used by the Minoans up until that point, is unfortunately undeciphered. Even if it was decoded, I doubt that we would have run upon the political situation during the Cretan collapse at the time. Either way, the script was replaced by the Mycenaean Linear B, which is deciphered and shows us a Bronze Age, late Bronze Age version of Greek language. But unfortunately, it does not talk about the political situation. It is just for the administrative purposes and so on. So, but it would be great to have linear A deciphered. But moving on, so the Mycenaean conquer Crete, they take over the island. They established a major palace center on Knossos. The other cities on the island, many of them are not rebuilt after the conquest. Many of them are left to slowly fade in relevance. And the Mycenaeans moved on. They took over most of the Aegean islands. They took over Rhodes and they expanded into Asia Minor. They took over the city of Miletus, which had been previously founded by the Minoans as a trade outpost. By the time Mycenaeans came in, they converted it into a military stronghold, a chief palatial center for the Mycenaean operations in Asia Minor. This is where they run into another expanding and emerging power, which is the old Hittite kingdom or the emerging Hittite empire of central Anatolia, centered in the city of Hattusa. The Hittites themselves, they expanded westward. They expanded westwards around the same time period in the late 15th century BC. And the first polity or a confederation of polities that they ran into before coming to direct contact with the Mycenaeans was the Ahhiyawan League. The Ahhiyawan League was a confederation of what Hittites called 22 cities and states. And at the time this happened, at the time they came into conflict with the Hittites, they were ruled by Piyamaradu and then by his son or successor Kukuli. Under the reign of Tudhaliya, the Hittites managed to defeat the Ahhiyawan League And many of those cities or states or petty kingdoms are now submerged, either submerged or made vassal states of the Hittite Empire in Western Anatolia. Also, what we do know from the later records is that the Mycenaeans and Ahhiyawan were allies, and that the Mycenaean ruler at the time had had forged a marriage-based alliance with the Ahhiyawan king and acquired a number of Aegean islands of the Anatolian coast. We do not know which islands were those, but that will become relevant later on. Ultimately, Asuba is dissolved and fragmented by the Hittites, and out of all these states, Arzawa emerges as the chief anti-Hittite polity in the region. We have Arzawa, which is centered around the city of Ephesus and does hold significant territories further inland when it comes to Western Asia Minor. We also have a state of Seha, or Seha Riverland as it is also called. This is an important polity at the time as well. We have Wilusa, which is the name the Hittites used for historical Troy. And we have some minor polities such as the Luca lands, historical Lycia. We have Karkia or Caria, and we have surrounding states, petty states, however you want to call them. Either way, by the time the Hittites conquer Assuwa, they fragmented into many parts. Many of those parts are now submerged or made vassals of the Hittites. And the Mycenaeans, they do not wait. They start expanding their influence right away. And thus the Hittites and the Mycenaeans run into each other. With that being said, we're going to move on the second segment, which is the Indictment of Madduwatta. This is what happens. This is actually the continuation as Hittites and Mycenaeans run into each other. We have the earliest historical mention of the Mycenaean Greece in the Hittite records. And at this time in the old Hittite language or the old Hittite dialect, the Mycenaean Greece or the chief polity of the Mycenaean Greece is called Ahhiya. Ahhiya, which would later in later Hittite dialect become better known as Ahhiyawa. So Ahhiya or Ahhiyawa are obviously Hittite adoptions of the Greek name Achaia or Achaia. We do know that Achaeans are prominently mentioned as the chief tribe of the chief tribe of the Greeks at the time of the Trojan War, as mentioned by Homer in the Iliad. Actually, all of Greeks are simultaneously called Achaeans, Argives, and Danaans. So we do know that Achaeans, that's the name that the Mycenaean Greeks, used for themselves. Mycenaeans is a term adopted by the scholars, modern scholars, to designate Greeks of the late Bronze Age period. What they called themselves was more than likely Achaeans, and Achaia was the chief polity of the Mycenaean Greece, consisting either of a major part or all of the Mycenaean Greece. We do not know the exact boundaries of this polity, but it was likely not a unitary polity. It is believed that Mycenaean Greece was not a single kingdom, but we are not 100% sure, but the chances are it was either a kind of a league or a confederation or some other kind of number of polities under the hegemony or rule of the palatial center in Mycenae, which is the biggest, the most important, and perceived capital of Bronze Age Greece. Thus, the whole, all of Greece and this period of the late Bronze Age is called Mycenaean Greece by the scholars. The Indictment of Madduwatta is a document either sent by the Hittites or just compiled by the Hittites and kept in the royal uh, archives against against an Anatolian warlord named Madduwatta. And this document is very important because from here we learn of the Hittite perception of the Mycenaeans. We learn of the earliest relations they had with the Mycenaean Greeks, and those were very, very hostile, not friendly at all. The Mycenaeans did not like the fact that the Hittites are entering Western Anatolia. They did not like the fact that they destroyed the state or confederation of Arzawa, and the Hittites did not like the fact that the Mycenaeans have arrived, established their stronghold in Miletus, and started expanding the area themselves. Also, from these records, which describe the time period during the reigns of Tudhaliya II, which is he's sometimes called Tudhaliya I, sometimes called Tudhaliya II, and sometimes in scholarly and in the studies you will find a person designated as Tudhaliya I/II. So we're talking about the same person, Tudhaliya I, Tudhaliya II. Um, it is confusing like that, but there's nothing I can do. It's not me who came up with these terms. For some reason, scholars are confused because they believe that there might have been another Tudhaliya several decades earlier, which they designate Tudhaliya I, which is not to be confused with the individual that we're talking about right now. Also, there was even earlier pre-dynastic or pre-old king, pre-imperial Tudhaliya, but we're not going to talk about him at the moment. So back to the late 15th century BC. Let's just call him Tudhaliya for the sake of this video. Just Tudhaliya, no number. We have Tudhaliya and we have his successor Arnawanda. So those are the two kings who reigned at the time of the events described in the Indictment of Madduwatta. We also have the first individual mentioned by name, the first Mycenaean individual mentioned by name by the Hittites, and we are obviously talking about Atarsia of Ahhiya, a great general, great commander from Mycenaean Greece. We do not know whether he is not titled, so we do not know whether he was a king, whether he was a prince, or just a commander, a general, a member of the royal family. It is unlikely that he would have been a king of Mycenae. That is very unlikely because there is just, if realistically, if you look at the political situation at the time, there is no incentive for a Mycenaean king to leave his throne, go to Asia Minor, and then undertake some campaigns which are of unclear relevance to the royal court of Mycenae at the time. Well, very relevant if you achieve victories, obviously, but there is just no point of putting yourself at risk if you are a king. So he was unlikely a king. What we do know what we can assume that he was a member of a royal family and a very powerful when it comes to Ahhiyawa or the Mycenaean Greece. We do have history of royal relatives showing up in Asia Minor when it comes to the Mycenaeans. We have Tabagalava centuries later, who is recorded as arriving to Miletus to handle instability in the region more than a century later. So Atarsia might have been a brother or otherwise a family member, but very unlikely that he was the Mycenaean ruler. In these events, he was just the main, well, not just, he was the main commander of the Mycenaean forces in Miletus and in Asia Minor. He was the chief of the Mycenaean operations. Why is he relevant? He comes to the Luca lands or at somewhere on the border of the Luca lands and the Hittite controlled area in a city, an unnamed city, I believe, which is ruled by an individual named Madduwatta. So Madduwatta is a ruler of a city either in the Luca lands, which is Lycia, or some border city between Luca lands and the Mycenaean territory, or between the Luca lands and the Hittite controlled lands. We do not know the exact location, but either way, Madduwatta is ruling a city in that area, and Mycenaeans are not allied with him. They're not friends. They're hostile. For whatever reason, they're invading, and they want him. They want to get Madduwatta. Atarsia is coming with an army. Madduwatta is unable to resist. He rules a city. He's not very powerful, not on the level of Arzawa, not on the level of Wilusa. So he's relevant in the region, but he's not that powerful. He's not able to resist. He escapes to Hittite controlled territory, and his city is presumably taken, or likely not destroyed, or the fate of his city is unknown. Either way, Atarsia is not able to capture Madduwatta, who escapes. So Atarsia is now clearly in the picture. Madduwatta flees to the Hittite territory, and he seeks refuge at the court of the Hittite king. There the Hittites accept him, they give him refuge, and they are going to use him as their vassal ruler in the area to keep Hittite enemies in check. Hittites install Madduwatta as a ruler of Zipasla land, which is believed to be a mountainous area somewhere at the border between Luca lands and the Hittite territory, or somewhere around the area between edges of Arzawa, Hittite, and Luca lands. So, unfortunately, we do not know the exact location of the Zipasla land, but it is called Mount Zipasla. So it's a mountainous area somewhere on the border between the Hittite controlled area and Luca lands slash Arzawa lands, somewhere in that general area. Madduwatta is installed as ruler over there. He is obviously a Hittite vassal, and he swears oath to the Hittite king that he would not take any action against anybody by himself without the Hittite permission. He would not engage in foreign policy independently of the Hittites, and he will work in Hittites' best interests. As soon as he's installed, he doesn't really respect the oath. He breaks the oath technically. He did not turn on the Hittites openly. He did not turn on the Hittites themselves, but he does take action without the consultation of the Hittites. He's ambitious. Madduwatta is an ambitious individual. He wants to be a king, a relevant factor in Western Anatolia, and his target is Kingdom of Arzawa, one of the chief anti-Hittite kingdoms in the area, perhaps one of the most powerful kingdoms in Western Anatolia, clearly allied with the Mycenaeans, clearly sponsored by the Mycenaeans, clearly on the good side of Atarsia. The Asuwa kingdom, the Arzawa kingdom is ruled by a king named Kupanta Kurunta. He is the ruler of Arzawa at the time. We're talking about late 15th century BC. We're probably the end of the century. We're not talking, yes, we're talking about the end of the 15th century, about year 1400. This is what we're talking about right now. Madduwatta invades, but he's no match for the Arzawan forces. He's defeated by Kupanta Kurunta, and Kupanta Kurunta does not stop. He conducts counterattack, and he runs Madduwatta back to the Zipasla land, and he invades himself. Madduwatta escapes once again to the Hittite territory, and the Hittites are now forced to come in directly and confront the Arzawans and beat them back. So ultimately, Kupanta Kurunta withdraws back to Ephesus, back to the Arzawa territory, and the Hittites are able to reinstall Madduwatta at Mount Zipasla. At this time, Madduwatta learns that he is not only that he is no match for the Arzawans, he is no match for the Mycenaeans, but also that the Hittites themselves are not very willing to go all out and attempt to conquer Arzawa and attempt to conquer the Mycenaean holdings in the area, the city of Miletus, the main source of the Mycenaean power in the area. So the Hittites, they have problems in the Middle East. They have a great empire to run. They are not focused on Western Anatolia. Perhaps they are, but they are unable to commit their full force to the area because they have adversaries on other fronts. Uh, they have the area of Cilicia. They have the Mitanni kingdom. They have problems with many of their neighbors. They are not able to focus only on Western Anatolia. And at this point, Madduwatta learns that his power is very limited, and his backing by the Hittites is also limited. And this is also noted by Atarsia of Ahhiya, and he now invades Zipasla. Atarsia himself comes to Zipasla. Zipasla and Madduwatta himself is obviously no match for Atarsia, as we know. He was no match where he was a king of his own city. He's no match where when he's a vassal king of the Hittites. His army is quickly defeated, beaten back. He escapes to the Hittite territory for the third time. And Atarsia himself enters Mount Zipasla, and the Hittites are in crisis right now. They are alerted. They sent expeditionary force under General Kisnapili in the area to fight off the threat. This is now a major threat, a great power. Perhaps we do not know whether or not the Hittites perceived Ahhiyawa or Ahhiya as a great kingdom at the time. They just encountered the Mycenaeans. Mycenaeans just expanded, so their perception of the Mycenaean power is unclear to us at the moment. But either way, they scramble expeditionary force. Hittite General Kisnapili is dispatched to the area, and we have a battle of Mount Zipasla between the Hittite Empire and the Mycenaean Greece. We have General Kisnapili on the Hittite side, we have Atarsia on the Mycenaean side, and the battle is very hard fought, reportedly. It's inconclusive. The Hittites claim not outright victory, not decisive victory, but they did manage to force Mycenaean army to withdraw. We have a report that one of the chief Hittite nobleman is killed in battle, and we have a report that one of the chief Mycenaean noblemen is also killed in battle. So there's obviously casualties on both sides. Kisnapili does manage to 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 beat the Mycenaeans back. Atarsia withdraws, whether it was a strategic or tactical withdrawal. That is most likely that the Mycenaeans have felt that Hittites are no ordinary adversary. It is they are a great power and they are not easily defeated. Atarsia is likely not ready for that kind of a battle, and neither is the majority of the Mycenaean army stationed in the city of Miletus, most likely. It is Mycenaeans are a sea-based entity. They are a naval superpower, not a land superpower. They are able to muster significant infantry, significant chariotry, but they are not a land-based superpower. So Atarsia withdraws back to Miletus. Kisnapili reinstalls Madduwatta on Mount Zipasla once again. And now, obviously, we do not know how exactly the battle went. We do not know what triggered Madduwatta to kind of switch sides now. Something that happened made Madduwatta realize that he's not going to be able to defeat the Mycenaeans in any way, shape, or form. So, what Madduwatta does next, he invites the Hittites, he invites General Kisnapili to invade Luca lands down south. And the Hittites oblige. Kisnapili with the Hittite expeditionary force now teams up with Madduwatta and they invade Luca lands. Their targets are cities of Tlos and Hinduwas, Tlava and Hindua as they were called in the Hittite records. Madduwatta tells Kisnapili, you go to one city, I'll go to another city, and together we'll defeat both of them. The Hittite army goes first, and what Madduwatta does, according to the Hittites, he betrays Kisnapili. He does not invade the Luca lands. He does not invade, he does not come to battle those cities. He instead dispatches messengers telling them that the Hittite army is in the area, telling them the exact location of Kisnapili and his force, which is marching to either Tlos or Hinduas. And he tells, obviously, he reveals everything to the Lucans, to the Lycians, and the Lycians are able to ambush the Hittites. They're able to close the road as the Hittites are marching forward and attack the convoy from all sides. The result was a catastrophe for the Hittite Empire in western Anatolia. The result is complete destruction of the Hittite expeditionary force. General Kisnapili is killed, and the great Hittite army, which beat off the Mycenaeans at the Battle of the Mount Zipasla, is now completely destroyed. Huge hit for the Hittite Empire, huge loss. They are not able to project power. They are not able to send another general of the same caliber. They are not able to send another expeditionary force in the area. They are able to send Indictment of Madduwatta, which is a strongly worded letter. That's what they're able to do at the moment, because a significant portion of their army, which is supposed to guard their western flank, is now completely erased. And as of this moment, we have Madduwatta turning away from the Hittites and kind of turning towards the Mycenaeans, towards the Arzawans, but he's still nominally the a Hittite vassal, and he's still, at least nominally in the official documents, in his correspondence with the Hittites, he's still pretending to be their vassal. He's still that's what the Hittites believe. They believe that Madduwatta has betrayed them. He's only pretending to be with them. That at least what we can say from the indictment of Madduwatta. The Hittites are upset about this. They're not able to do much because a good portion of their overall army, their main expeditionary force in the Western Anatolia, is completely deleted. They're not able to do much, and they keep protesting to Madduwatta on his actions moving forward. And those actions are political marriage with a daughter of or either his daughter was married to the king of Arzawa or vice versa. Either way, he has some kind of a marriage alliance now with Kupanta Kurunta, and the Hittites sent him a letter. What are you doing? This is supposed to be your enemy. And what Matuwata does, he makes an excuse. He says that he's only doing that so he can lure Kupanta Kurunta into a trap and kill him, which doesn't look very realistic uh, from this point. From this point of view, he was already defeated by Kupanta Kurunta. Now he's trying to allegedly lure him in the open by a marriage alliance so he can get him, capture him, or kill him. Probably, or most likely, obviously, an excuse by Madhuwata, but he continues doing what Hittites perceive to be hostile acts towards them. He crushes a few rebellions against the Hittites. He does do that, but instead of returning those lands to the Hittites, he keeps them. So Hittites are very upset, and the Mycenaeans are very happy about what happened. Their main adversary, a guy that contested them in the area, is now gone. Kisnapili is killed, and their adversary, the Hittite vassal, which caused much of this, is now kind of working hand in hand with them, which we can see further in the following years. Now it is about 1400, maybe early 14th century BC, early years of the 14th century. The island of Cyprus, the kingdom of Alasia, is at least claimed by the Hittites to be their vassal state or their ally. Either way, I believe they claimed that Alasia was their vassal. Whether or not it was really a vassal state of the Hittites is unknown, to say at least, if not unlikely. Perhaps they sent certain materials to the Hittites which were taken as tribute, and thus the Hittites claimed that. But the Hittites have no naval power projection at this time, so it is it is not very relevant, the relations between Alasia and the Hittites. Either way, they did claim so. At least they claimed so to Madhuwata, because what Madhuwata did, he joined Atarsia on his naval campaigns, on his naval raids against Cyprus, and he raided the kingdom of Alasia together with other Mycenaean vassals of the area. There was a minor kingdom, or a ruler from the area mentioned by the Hittites as working under Atarsia as he raids the island of Cyprus. And as a result of this, the Hittites are once again only able to complain about it. They're not doing anything about it directly. Their power is clearly not there in Western Anatolia, and Madhuwata is seemingly more powerful than he ever was. by aligning himself, at least unofficially, with the Mycenaeans and with the Arzawans. Arzawa ruled by King Kupanta Kurunta, a great ally of the Mycenaeans. The outcome of the whole thing, as we have already mentioned, death of Kisnapili in Luka lands. Madduwatta switches sides, at least according to the Hittites, and he does so unofficially, just for record. He's not an open enemy of the Hittites. He still acknowledges the overlordship of the Hittites, but he does things completely independently and against the interests of the Hittites. Mycenaean raids on Cyprus, on the kingdom of Alasia, and the subsequent Hittite decline in the 14th century BC. So the Hittites are on the decline right now. They're not able to do much. They have problems elsewhere, and they are not able to send another expeditionary force to deal with this issue, which is clear in the following period, where we have expansion of the kingdom of Arzawa. They expand eastwards. They take some of the Hittite lands in the following decades under King Tarhuntaradu, I believe, who is even acknowledged as great king by the Egyptians. He has relations with the kingdom of Egypt. So Arzawa is able to profit off this greatly at the expense of the Hittites. And Madduwatta was one of the chief figures when it comes to this. He is the person who orchestrated the downfall of the Hittite army in western Anatolia. He's the person behind the death of Kisnapili. And moving forward, the Hittites are not only having problems on the eastern flank, they're having problems with the Kaskan peoples to the north of the Hittite lands in central Anatolia, from Kaskans who are located in the northern part of central Anatolia on the coast, and the mountainous area between the Hittite lands and the Black Sea. We have Luis Aldames in the chat as well. Shout out to him, as well as to Tomahawk, Lino Benetti, and we have AE from Greece and Cyprus. Shout out to him. It is very late in Europe right now, so if anybody is from Greece or Cyprus here watching live, well, thank you. Shout out to you. So with this segment, so this completes the Madduwatta segment. The Hittites are on the downfall. They fight the so-called Hittite wars of survival. They are fighting against Kaskans. They are fighting against Arzawans. They are losing there, and they are fighting against a kingdom on their eastern flank, Hayasa Asi, I believe, where the historical kingdom of Armenia is located. So they are having multiple enemies. They are facing great problems. Ahhiyawa, or Mycenaean Greece, is slowly becoming the least of their problems because they are really fighting for their survival in the following decades throughout the middle and throughout the early and middle 14th century BC, throughout the mid 1300s. The Hittites are really weakened, and that will continue until the emergence of Suppiluliuma I. All right, so we have History with Sai says he loves the colors. Nice. Uh, we have Josh Garner. Thank you for streaming. Well, thank you for being here. We have 40, nearly 37, at least according to the Steam Labs count, people online. Thank you for being here. It's 10:42 p.m. here on the East Coast right now, so it's very difficult from people from Europe to be online for these live episodes, but this is the only time of the day where I can really host them, unfortunately. But that might change from the upcoming weekend. Moving forward, I'll try to work on that and do weekend episodes, do live episodes on the weekend, and make them at earlier time during the day here, so that people from Europe, viewers from Europe, can watch them live as well. Luis Aldames hailed the Wanax at 4:25 a.m. Wow. So this is what I'm talking about. Well, thank you very much, Luis, for showing up so late or so early in the morning. I will try to change this for next weekend. So I was, due to the nature of my job and everything else, my schedule is really packed. So I was not able to go live earlier this weekend, and I really wanted to go with this episode because this is what everybody voted for on the community page. And I really owed you this one, this episode. It's a deep dive into these conflicts. So I didn't want to wait for another week, or I didn't want to do it midweek. It is. I just decided it is what it is. We're going live at night. I'll try to change that for next week, and I'll try to do a live episode at some point, maybe 2, 3 p.m. So it's evening in Europe, so everybody can watch it. And I also do know that it's better for the channel as well, because I will have more viewers. And now we passed 40, so that's great. That's quite an accomplishment considering it's so late, because a good percentage of viewers are from Greece and from Europe and from Cyprus. A very good percentage, not majority. It's between the U.S. and Europe, I would say. So it's a challenge for people in Europe to show up. So thank you very much for being here at 4 a.m. It's now 4:40 a.m., I guess. The Sea Peoples did not collapse the Bronze Age. They were the Bronze Age. Tomahawk Greek heroes such as Heracles and Perseus supposedly went to Cilicia and conquered some places there. Yes, there's a lot of stories in Greek mythology, especially when it comes to Heracles. He traveled all over. And Odysseus, let's not forget him. But Heracles, we need to do an episode on Heracles. That's something that I wanted to do for a long time, but that's going to require a lot of preparation, a lot of research, because Heracles is not, it's not a small topic. It's a huge topic, and perhaps I could do something specific about some labors of Heracles, about some of his undertakings. But if I were to do Heracles in general, something on a more uh, comprehensive side of the mythology of Heracles, that would be very challenging. Luis Aldamis, that's Kizuwatna to you, Kilikia. Yes, that I said historical Kilikia. That's what I meant. Kizuwatna. That's a kingdom located in southern Anatolia, where historical Kilikia was. So that's south of the Hittite lands, the coastal area close to Ugarit, up opposite Cyprus. That area was the kingdom of Cilicia in the 14th century BC. Yes, Tarsus was located in the kingdom of Cilicia. Tarsus was supposedly founded by people from Argos. Bellerophon fell of Pegasus and Heracles was held prisoner by the local hero Sundon. Well, more Greek mythology. Did the Mycenaeans play a part in the Asuva Federation? Vin Russo asks. Shout out to Vin Russo. So Mycenaeans were not a part of Asuva themselves. Also, by the way, Asuva is the origin of the word Asia. So Asuva in the linear B, Asia or Asia, is the origin of the name Asia. Luis Aldames, so you are Wanax of California. No, I'm not of California. I'm located on the East Coast. History with Sai went to California, I believe, last week or a few days ago, and he happened to be there when the Getty Villa Museum had a featured exhibition on the Kingdom of Pylos. So he was there. He took a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, and he sent some of that to me so that I could display that for my Patreon page. Cappadocia is inland, closer to the Hittite heartland, and Kizwanta is Kilikia. That's correct. So interdict says Heracles would be interesting. I know it would be. I would need much time for the to prepare myself for Heracles, which a time which I do not have at the moment because the vast majority of my work of my time that I spend working on the channel now at this moment goes to the Etruscan civilization. I really want to finish that. It's been so long. I learned how difficult it is to produce a multiple hours documentary. I never attempted that before, and I have learned the hard way that it's not an easy thing to do. But I want to make sure it's top production, that it's the best quality that I've ever produced, which is why I brought a professional narrator, Thomas Wicello. Once again, let me put him on the screen now when there's more people on, just so you can see. Thomas Wicello, he will be the narrator for the Etruscan Civilization documentary. So check his channel, check his work. He does recitation in ancient Greek language. I believe he did so for the book one of the Iliad, and he's I believe I believe he's educated in classics and English language, and he also has expertise in ancient Greek and Latin. So check him out. If you like what you see, give him a subscribe. Back to the okay, so we have a lot of we have a few more comments before we proceed with the next segment, which is the fall of Arzawa. So before we proceed with this, uh, I'll just answer some of these comments real quick. Sick Puppy asks, would you consider a super detailed rise and fall of Assyrian, Old, Middle, and Neo-Assyrian empires? So this is a great question. I'm glad you asked this, and I'm glad that History with Sai is here right now. So this is great. History with Sai, I'm not actually sure if I'm allowed to reveal this, but when it comes to Assyria and the comprehensive history of the Assyrian Empire, History with Sai has something in works. So pay close attention to History with Sai and his channel, and something big on Assyria might be coming soon. So I need I let me check with him real quick. Let me quickly ask him something. Moving on, his history would say, I'm the king of California and Akkad. Yeah, that's true. That's true. He still lays claim to the Akkadian Empire. We have Louis Aldamis. Heracles is a massive endeavor, half of Greek legend on his own. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a difficult thing to do for sure, but we will do it at some point for sure. We will do Heracles, and we will do Heraclidae, the descendants of Heracles. We will do the mythological Heraclidae, beginning with Helos and his descendants leading to the fall of Mycenae itself. That's an interesting topic on its own. So we'll go through that as well at some point in time. But yes, Assyria, I will not be doing Assyria in the near future, which is why you need to pay a close attention to History with Sai and his videos. I will say that much. Especially when it comes to the complete, comprehensive history of the Assyria, the Old, Middle, and Neo-Assyrian Empire. I think History with Sai is your man. I think he should add King of California, Akkad, and Ashur um, in the title as well. Yeah, he says, sure, no worries. You all got the scoop here on WanaxTV. Yeah, nice. Thank you. Well, now that I have mentioned it already, it's good that I have permission after I've already done it. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. And shout out to History with Sai. He has been, if I could single out an individual who's been the most supporting of WanaxTV TV from day one, from before the day one actually. Even before I created the channel, History with Sai had some insights on my work, which helped me go with the channel faster. I was thinking about it. I sent him some video, some short introduction video. He liked it, and he helped me very much, not only in the beginning, obviously, with the advice and everything, but he helped. He continues to help the channel continuously since day one till since day zero till today. So big thanks to History with Sai, and we got to reveal some of his upcoming content. So if you want to see Assyria, pay attention to History with Sai. All right, and Luis Aldames says, I'm a great admirer of Sai, especially his chapters on Cyprus. Okay, back to the segment number 3. We have Fall of Arzawa. We were just talking about the Madduwatta, how he was one of the most important individuals when it comes to the decline of the Hittite power in Western Anatolia in the 14th century BC, in the 1400s. I said 14th century. What I meant is the 15th century BC. So Madduwatta in the Well, I got confused by these numbers. We are talking about the 14th century BC right now. That's correct. So 1300s, mid 1300s, the Hittites are on the decline in Western Anatolia. They're on the heavy decline in general. They're fighting the Hittite wars on of survival with the Kaskans, with the Arzawans, and with the Hayasaazi kingdom, where the historical Armenia is located. Whether or not they were the ancestors of the ancient Armenians is debated. So that's perhaps a topic where which we could have another time. Either way, the Arzawa is on the rise. They take Pitasa, as you can see on the screen right now. This is approximate map of how far the Arzawa went, and even a little bit further in the south, they were encroaching on the Hittite heartland, on the lower lands, on the main Hittite territory. Arzawans were entering, and the Hittites were able to fight this off only with the rise of Shuppiluliuma I. So the Hittites are in disarray. Even their capital city of Hattusa is sacked by the Kaskans. They had to relocate their capital to a smaller city. And this is where we have Shuppiluliuma I. He rises to power in mid 14th century BC. He fights off Kaskans. He fights off some of the Hittite rivals, I believe, and he stops Arzawan advance on the Hittites. He takes back Pitasa, I believe, but he does not go further. He does not take Hapala. So right now Arzawa is at the peak of its power, but they just lost Pitasa to Shuppiluliuma I. And after Shuppiluliuma, one of his I believe Mursili I was not the immediate successor, but he came shortly afterwards. So 1330, the second part of the 14th century BC, we have Mursili I rising to the throne. He is one of the sons of Shuppiluliuma I, I believe. There was one of his elder brothers that was on the throne. Let me double check that. We want to be very accurate here. We do not want to guess too much. So we'll just quickly check the list of the Hittite kings to make sure that I'm correct on this because it's very important. So yes, Shuppiluliuma I is succeeded by Arnawanda II, who is his son, but he is then succeeded. He rules for only 1 year, and then he's succeeded by Shuppiluliuma's other son, Mursili II. And Mursili ascends to the throne where the Hittite Empire is kind of reestablished. It regained its status as a great power, but there are still enemies, and those enemies are the Kaskans, Hayasa Azi, and Arzawans, chiefly, those three kingdoms. And they were stopped in their tracks by Shuppiluliuma I, but now Shuppiluliuma's younger son, Mursili, is on the throne, and he does not command much respect when it comes to the Hittite enemies. When it comes to the Mycenaeans, they are not doing much at the moment. They are having control over Miletus, perhaps some holdings in Caria as well, in other parts of Caria. And they have alliance with Arzawa, which is now a very powerful kingdom on its own. Luis Aldames, Arzawans should be Proto-Lydian, right? I believe this might be correct. There is no precise identification or reveal of the Arzavan identity by the Hittite records. They do not explicitly say that Arzawans they are believed to be related to Luvians, and I believe that they are likely related to the ancestors of the Lydians as well, because the kingdom of Lydia emerged afterwards from roughly the same area, and there are no records that there was any population displacement at the area. So Lydia emerges out of what you out of the areas which on the screen you see as Arzawa and perhaps Mira. So you are likely correct on that one, Louis. That's right. Atarsia is usually interpreted as Atreus, just not the Atreus of legend, maybe a great grandson. Yes, the usual transliteration of Atarsia or Atarsias is Atreus, which is Atreus. We do know that the house of Atreus, a topic that we previously done, of the house of Pelops, the father of Agamemnon, was the great king Atreus, but we are not talking about him. This Atarsia is an earlier individual, and he was likely not a king, but he was very likely a member of the Mycenaean royal family. Kupanta Kurunta, or some king of Mira, left a stone inscription in some Anatolian dialect. Luvian question mark. We will get to that ruler as well, as he's relevant to another segment, which is the Milawata letter, which we will get to. We are only on segment number 3 right now, and we have 10 segments to go through. So this is a heavy duty episode, as I have mentioned. We're already an hour and 15 minutes in. So this is perhaps a more difficult episode than I anticipated, but nevertheless, here we go. So it is the middle/late part of the 14th century BC. King Mursili II succeeds his brother on the throne, the son of Shupililiuma I. His brother reigns for only 1 year. He dies. Mursili II is the king of the Hittite Empire, and he is not very feared. The Hittite enemies, Arzawans, Hayasa Azi, and Kaskans, believe that the Hittites are weak once again, that the time to strike them is now, that they can fight them once again and finish them off. That's something that we can see from a Hittite letter, which quotes, they have quotations from the king of Arzawa, who he did respect Suppiluliuma I, but he does not respect his son, Mursili II. And the king of Arzawa at this time is Uhaziti. He's seated in Ephesus. He is allied with the king of Ahhiyawa or Achaia, the king of Mycenae. They're allies. And Uhaziti is very powerful. He has aspirations of creating a great kingdom of his own. He has aspirations of forwarding the power of Arzawa and making it one of the great kingdoms of the known world, of the Bronze Age world. And I will quickly find a quote of what he said about Mursili II. I came prepared for this episode. Is- There's a comment in the chat. Maybe take a break in the middle for you and for us. Yes, I will. I will do that when we finish with the fall of Arzawa. We're going to take a tiny break and maybe I will engage with chat a little bit. But I am not going anywhere. I'm not going to pause the episode or anything like that. As I'm looking for this quote, I'm also using the time to take a little break as well. So All right, so here we go. So Uhaziti did respect Shupililiuma II, a king who stopped the expansion of Arzawa at the expense of the Hittites, a king who restored the power of the Hittite Empire and stopped its decline, and ultimately saved the Hittites from complete collapse. Shupililiuma I did. His son, Mursili II, is not perceived as a powerful individual clearly by their adversaries, and one of the chief adversaries of the Hittites is the king of Arzawa, Uhaziti. And he has the following to say about Mursili II. So there was a problem, a continuation of the Arzawan Hittite War. There was a problem of the fugitives against the Hittites of the two cities which the Hittites conquered during these years. The fugitives, the rulers of these cities on the Arzawan Hittite border, they fled to Uhaziti, and when Mursili II requested their extradition, Uhaziti did not take him seriously at all. So he had the following to say: "You are a child, you know nothing and install no fear in me. Your land is now in ruins, and your infantry and chariotry are few. Against your infantry I have many infantry. Against your chariotry I have many chariotry. Your father had many chariotry and infantry, but you, who are a child, how can you match him?" So this is what Uhaziti of Arzawa said. He said this, he told Murzili II this in a letter. So clearly he perceived that, he says, your land is still in ruins. So the Hittites are still recovering from the vast destruction they suffered by the Kaskans during the reign of Supililiuma. By all of these Hittite wars of survival, the Hittites themselves were left devastated. But Supililiuma he managed to bring them back. He managed to restore the empire, to restore a good part of the Hittite kingdom to prevent the collapse. But when he was succeeded by Mursili II, Arzawa still perceived Hittites as weak at this point. Either way, this back and forth between Uhaziti and Mursili II results in war. Now we have war between the Hittite Empire and the kingdom of Arzawa. And the war is, the Hittites are taking the offense. They did stop Arzawan offense in the past. They did beat the Arzawa of the land of Pitasa during Supililiuma I, and they are now trying to invade Arzawa under Mursili II. Uhaziti is de facto the most powerful ruler in Western Anatolia at the moment. He has vassals of his own. He has the kingdom of Mira under his influence. He has possibly has kingdom of Wilusa under somewhat Arzawan influence. It is unclear, but he does have his own allies in the region. When it comes to Western Anatolia, he is the most powerful individual, and he is backed by another great kingdom, the kingdom of Ahhiyawa, or another great power, let's say. If Ahhiyawa was not a single kingdom, but a collection of minor kings under a hegemon, Wanax, seated in Mycenae. We do not know that, but for the purpose of this video, Ahhiyawa, we're going to treat it as a great kingdom. So the war between Arzawa and the Hittite Empire begins. The Arzawan force is led by Uhaziti's sons, Piyamaradu and Tapalazunali, and the Hittite force is led by the great king himself, Mursili II. We have a subsequent battle in the border area between the two, where the Hittite army defeats the Arzawan force and continues marching forward. So this is a key battle. We have a battle of Walma by the Astrapa River, somewhere within the Arzawan territory. The great Hittite expeditionary force is able to defeat the Arzawans, and they are now marching straight on Ephesus, on Apasa, as the Hittites called it. And now we have another event recorded by the Hittites, perhaps propaganda, perhaps it really happened. Either way, they record a sky falling on Uhaziti's head, pretty much. They Mursili II, in his annals, he describes his conquest of Ephesus and his conquest of Arzawa. So as Mursili marches forward to the Arzawan capital, he says the following: "The mighty storm god, my lord, showed his divinity, righteous power, and hurled a thunderbolt. All of my troops saw the thunderbolt. All the land of Arzawa saw the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt passed us and struck the land of Arzawa. It struck Uhaziti's city, Apasa, or Ephesus. It settled in Uhaziti's knees, and he became ill." So what Mursili is saying right now is that as his army is marching towards Ephesus, they see a thunderbolt flying towards the capital city of Arzawa, and it strikes right underneath Uhaziti's knees, and he becomes ill. Obviously, this is very unlikely to have happened, but this is how Mursili II says he achieved his victory. The king became ill. The Hittites were able to defeat the Arzawans moving forward. They are able to enter the capital of Arzawa, and Uhaziti and his two sons are forced to withdraw, to flee. They leave Arzawa and they seek refuge in Ahhiyawan. They seek refuge in Mycenaean Greece, and they arrive to one of the islands of the Anatolian coast controlled by the Mycenaeans. And by the way, I forgot to mention that during this war, the kingdom of Mira refused to send troops to help Arzawa, and there was an invasion, Arzawan invasion on Mira, led by Piyamaradu, the son of Uhaziti, and he devastated one or few of the cities in the land of Mira, and he came back, and then Arzawans were defeated by the Hittites. So this move or refusal by the kingdom of Mira to provide help to the Arzawans was greatly respected by Mursili II. It was greatly respected by the Hittites, and they were very lenient towards Mira moving forward. But either way, the Hittites are now victorious. They defeated the kingdom of Arzawa. The kingdom of Arzawa is collapsing, and Uhaziti is in exile on a Mycenaean island. We do not know which exact island is it. Is it Samos? Is it Chios? Is it Rhodes? So he's located in one of the Mycenaean islands. The Hittites are not a naval power. They do not have fleet. They are not able to pursue, and they are not willing to go to war with the Mycenaeans. They are not willing to go to Miletus either. They just conquered Arzawa, and the sons of Uhaziti are now waging, they are inciting rebellion against the Hittites in the area. Tapalazunali, he makes his last attempt to defeat the Hittites to stop the collapse of the Arzawan kingdom, and he makes the last attempt at the city of Puranda. I believe the city was being besieged by the Hittite forces. He tried to defeat them there. He was unsuccessful, and Arzawa was definitely conquered, subjugated, and taken by the Hittites. Shortly afterwards, King Uhaziti, he dies in exile. He dies in Mycenaean exile, and thus Arzawa is ended. Mycenaeans are now negotiating with the Hittites. They do not want Mursili II invading Miletus. They want them to stop there, and they want the Hittites to withdraw because they are now dangerously close to the Mycenaean holdings. So there's a negotiation between Ahhiyawa and Mursili II, and in the end, the Mycenaeans, they agree to extradite Uhaziti's son and designated successor, Piyamaradu. They extradite him to the Hittites, and he's taken prisoner to Hattusa. The Hittite campaign is concluded. And the Arzawan kingdom is no more. The Arzawan territories are now fragmented and divided between the client kingdoms of the Hittites, namely Mira, Seha, and Hapala. You do not see the map on the screen right now. I'd like to show you where those vassal kingdoms are located. But either way, the kingdom of Mira gets a significant chunk of the Arzavan territory, and especially because they refused to aid Arzawa in their war against the Hittites. The Mycenaeans, they are not happy with this development at all. They had one great kingdom as their staunch ally, and now they have three Hittite vassal states at their borders. They are very, very unhappy. But either way, with this, we conclude the fall of Arzawa, which is accomplished by King Mursili II. And by 1300 BC, Arzawa is no more. Lino Benetti says, Lesbians, or the inhabitants of the island of Lesbos, were war refugees from Anatolia. Cisco says, looking forward to the Etruscan and Kikuli videos. Wanax, good job. Also, I think Lelex would be a good topic. So Lelex is a mythological king of and the founder of the tribe of the Leleagues, an autochthonous tribe from the Aegean Sea, associated with the lands of the Carians, I believe, and some other coastal lands in western Anatolia. They are one of those autochthonous peoples mentioned in Greek mythology together with the Pelasgians, Cicones, and others. Perhaps we could do a video on them in the future, especially one of these live episodes, which are done in a more casual format. Perhaps we could do that. And oh yes, looking forward to yes, I am looking forward to the Etruscan video as well, and Kikuli video. I will not forget that. I have a request from one of our patrons to do that, and it's been due for a year now. I feel very bad that Kikuli, the the master horse trainer, has not been done yet. I have partially completed the scenario for it, and as soon as the Etruscan video is out, Kikuli will be. It is one of the three videos that I am preparing for the end of the year. Luis Aldames is correct in saying that leagues should be pronounced as leleges. That is correct. That is I very often I resort to the anglicized pronunciation without thinking too much. But yes, the correct pronunciation is leleges. The leleges. Those were the people we are talking about. Vin Russo, I'm wondering about Mospos and the foundation of the Greek cities in Cilicia and Pamphylia after the Trojan War. Shout out to Total War Pharaoh, especially the Dynasties version. Beautiful. Wesker says beautiful pronunciation. Well, thank you. I do want to have pronunciations which are closer to the original Greek ones. If I'm not able to get the perfect Greek pronunciation, sometimes Greek pronunciations are not very suitable for the content. For example, if I were to pronounce Alexander as Alexandros or how the Greeks say the name, how the Greeks originally pronounced the name. They did not say Alexander, they did not say Alexander. They said they pronounced it close to Alexandros. And Homer would not. They did not pronounce Homer as Homer. They pronounced him as Homeros. So in some instances, it's impractical to use the Greek pronunciation, but some kind of adjustment is very nice to make it sound closer to the original pronunciation, and which is why I will adopt leleges as the pronunciation for the leagues. Yes, I agree with Luis Aldamis. Sometimes, especially when we talk about the leleges, when I say leagues, you might have no idea what I'm talking about because anglicized pronunciation will really do a disservice to the word, and it can slip unnoticed without anybody knowing what I just said. So we'll call this tribe leleges moving forward. And we are also going to move forward to the aftermath of the fall of Arzawa. Here we have the Ahhiyawan ladder, dispute over the islands, and this is one of the letters of correspondence between the king of Ahhiyawan and the king of the Hittites, the king of Hatti, in the aftermath of the Hittite conquest of Arzawa. Unfortunately, this letter is heavily fragmented. Much of it is destroyed. It did not survive, but we do have some fragments of the letter. Unfortunately, we do not have the name of the Mycenaean or Ahhiyawan king. If we did have this letter, we would have had the Hittite transliteration of the actual name of the Ahhiyawan king who sent the letter, but the letter breaks off just before he would have mentioned his name. So unfortunately, we do not know who the king of Achaia is who's the king in question when it comes to the Greeks. But nevertheless, he has a dispute with the Hittites because the Hittites they conquered Arzawa, they split it, they divided it between their vassal states, Mira, Hapala, and Seha. And they are also trying to lay claim to some of the islands in the Aegean Sea of the Arzawan land, of the Arzawan coast. But the Mycenaeans are in control of these islands. They are having none of this. They do not want any Hittite control, in any Hittite presence in the Aegean islands. That's not an option for the Mycenaeans, and they sent a letter. Obviously, there's a Hittite, there's a back and forth exchange, which we unfortunately do not have. We know that based on what is being said in this particular letter, where the king of Ahhiyawa says that the Hittite king told him that as for the islands that you presumably claim, the storm god gave them to me in subjugation. That's what the Hittite king says. Regarding the islands, the god gave them to me in subjugation. That's the Hittite claim. And the Mycenaean response is that's not going to happen. So the Mycenaean response is that the islands were given to Ahhiyawa a long time ago by the king of Assuwa. So back in the days of the old Tudhalia, when he destroyed the original Assuwa confederation, we had a marriage alliance between the old king of Ahhiyawa and the king of Assuwa. Well, not between them personally, but involving, I believe, daughter of the king of Assuwa, who was married into the Ahhiyawan royal family, perhaps to the Ahhiyawan king himself. I'm not sure about this, but there is a record that says who exactly was in question. Either way, based on this marriage, the islands of the land of the coast of Anatolia were given to the Mycenaeans. And this is what the Mycenaean king says to his Hittite counterpart in the letter. He says that the islands formerly indeed belonged to the king of Ahhiyawa, and this is a direct quote. Yes, so the islands in question formerly indeed belonged to the king of Ahhiyawa, and I have now written to my brother on the account of this. So the two kings are now using the word my brother to when they communicate to one another, which in the Bronze Age context refers to kings of equal status, refers to the great kings representing great kingdoms. And the Hittite Empire is one of those. The Mitanni kingdom was one of those, but not anymore since Shupililiuma's defeat of the Mitanni, a spot which would later be claimed by the emerging Assyrian Empire. But at this point, it's the Hittite Empire, it's the Babylonian Empire, and it's the Egyptians, the Egyptian kingdom, and obviously the kingdom of Ahhiyawa or the Mycenaean Greece. They also are perceived as equals to the Hittites when it comes to this diplomatic correspondence. So as we've already mentioned, the islands in question are not unknown. We do not know which exact islands they're talking about. Are they talking about some of these tiny islands off the Carian coast? Are they talking about the island of Chios, which would be a good educated guess, a solid educated guess? Or they're talking about the island of Samos, which is the closest to the former Arzawan capital of Ephesus. Perhaps we're talking about Samos. So one of those islands, Luis Aldames says Rhodes, probably. But Rhodes, if you take a look at the map right now as we're seeing it on the screen, Rhodes is further south. It's far, far away from the Hittite influence. Even after they took Arzawa and split it between the client kingdoms, Rhodes is way to the south. It's still way out of the Hittite reach. So I would not say that it was Rhodes, to be honest, because Rhodes is it's located off Carian and Lycian coast. It's very far away. It's outside of the Hittites' reach clearly, and it's south of Miletus. And the Hittites did not have any control south of Miletus. They did not control Caria. Luis Aldame says, true, but it's better documented as Greek controlled. This is correct. We do know that Rhodes was very well documented as Mycenaean controlled, and there was a fortress, a Bronze Age fortress called Orihoma, I believe, on Rhodes. That was the main Achaean or Mycenaean fortress in the late Bronze Age. I believe it's located where either it's located where one of the three classical Rhodian cities were located. Was it Cameros or one of the other two cities? I'm not sure, but there was a fort Achaea on the settlement known as Orihoma on Rhodes. So I don't believe that the Hittites would lay claim to Rhodes at any point in time because it was firmly within the Mycenaean territory. It is well documented, but I think that they would have, if Morsili or Muwatalli would have claimed any island, it would have to be something extremely close to the area they hold. It could not have been Rhodes. Rhodes is very far away. It's firmly protected by the Mycenaean fleet. There's no chance that the Hittites could have done anything to Rhodes. So my guess is either Chios or Samos. That would be my guess. And the outcome of this dispute, yes, I would say Samos. I would say Samos has the best chance. Obviously, we do not know for sure because there are no records. But if I were to take an educated guess, I would say my number one guess would be Samos because it's the closest to Ephesus. So just and it's extremely close to the coast, to the mainland. It's very close. That's the island that's one of the closest to the Anatolian mainland. Chios is, as you can see on the map right now, Chios is a little bit further away, west of Myra, and kind of in the midst of the sea. But if you take a look at Samos, which is a tiny island to the south of it, it's between Miletus and Ephesus. It forms a kind of a triangle with Ephesus and Miletus, obviously to the west. It's the best candidate for sure. Yes, Aldamis says it's very close to the mainland. Yes, that's right. So my guess would be Samos, but we do not know. Either way, it is unlikely that the Hittites were able to take Samos. There are no records. It's very likely that the Achaeans who just said, no, that's ours. We claim that since the previous century, and there's not much that the Hittites were able to do about it. They were not willing to go to war with the Achaeans, and the Achaeans were not, likely not willing to go to the war with Hittites either at this point. And the whole region of Western Anatolia was left to proxy warfare between the two powers. So moving on from the island dispute, we have a conflict over Wilusa. So this dispute between the Hittites and the Mycenaeans is a direct result of the Mycenaean conquest of Arzawa, and the Hittites are now in an advantageous position, and the Mycenaeans do not like this geopolitical situation. As I have mentioned, they used to have a great ally, a powerful ally in Arzawa. Now they have three tiny hostile kingdoms which are under the Hittite influence. And the kingdom of Wilusa is further north, and it's very wealthy. It's strategically located between the Aegean and the Black Sea, and it's a prize in the eyes of both Hittites and the Mycenaeans. And the conflict over Wilusa is something that we know of based on some of the following letters of correspondence between the two powers from the following decades, where they do mention hostilities and conflict between the two powers over the kingdom of Wilusa and the city of Wilusa. Obviously, we're talking about Troy, the city of Troy, the historical site of Troy, known as Wilusa to the Hittites, and known as Ilion to the Greeks, or reconstructed as Wilion in the Mycenaean Greek speech. And this conflict is known from Manapa Tarhunta letter. Manapa Tarhunta is one of the Hittite vassal kings. He rules over Seha River land, which is to the north of Mira, one of the three client states of the Hittites, and it is a kingdom located between Wilusa to the north and Mira to the south and the southeast. The conflict is not very well documented, but what we can say from the correspondence is that the Mycenaeans or some powers, perhaps Wilusan powers, supported by the Mycenaeans, took control of the city. There was back and forth between them and the Hittites. There was, like I can see on the notes, either Ahhiyawan or Ahhiyawan-backed campaign where Wilusa is taken. And this is recorded by Manapa Tarhunta himself, who sends a letter to the Hittites, and he says, hey, the Wilusa is taken. The Hittites tell him, go defend it. We want it in the Hittite sphere of influence under the Hittite hegemony, and Manapa Tarhunta is not going to fight over Wilusa. And even when the Hittite expeditionary force arrives to the region to challenge the Mycenaeans or Mycenaean-backed forces, Manapatar junta does not join them. And also, this is the first instance when we have mention of an individual named Piyamaradu. So Piyamaradu emerges in the what used to be Arzawan heartland, an area between Ephesus and perhaps a little further inland to between Ephesus and the city of Ialanda, as it was called by the Hittites. You can see where you can see Arzawa on the map right now. So this is where the rebellion breaks out, either a rebellion or some kind of insurgency led by an individual named Piyamaradu, and he seizes that territory for himself. And that territory is not controlled by the Hittites or Mira or Hapala at the moment. It's now revived. We do not know whether Piyamaradu was born in Arzawa lands, whether he was from the from the deposed Arzavan royal family or a relative, but he does appear to be an important and well-respected individual, at least when it comes to the Mycenaeans and the lands of Arzawa. So he is instrumental to the Mycenaean aims in this conflict. He is sent to invade the kingdom of Mira, and he defeats. I'm sorry, he invades the kingdom of Seha, which is located to the north of Mira, and perhaps at this point in time, Seha is also controlling the coast that you see here on the map. So Mira is a smaller kingdom at the it is their boundaries are unknown, so it's difficult to say, but it does appear that Seha, as you can see on an updated map right now, Seha is controlling the coastline, and it controls possibly coast all the way to Ephesus. We do not know that, but it would make sense. It's a plausible scenario because Piyamaradu invades Seha. The king of Seha, Manapatar junta, does not stop him, and Piyamaradu places the land of Seha. He takes it away from from the Hittite vassalage, and he places it under the overlordship of the city of Miletus. So he is working hand in hand with the Mycenaean governor in Miletus, who is named Atpa in the Hittite sources, or Atpas would be a natural Greek version of the name, or perhaps original name, Atpas, or something of the sort. Luis Aldames says Ceja definitely controls the main land route to Troy. Yes, that's correct. So Mira is likely a little bit inland, where the heartland of the kingdom of Lydia would later be. That would be the kingdom of Mira. And Ceja would be the kingdom controlling the land route, the coastal land route between the Arzavan heartland on the southern side and the Troy, the Wilusan kingdom on north, on the northern side, or to its north. So the Hittites do not stand idle by these developments. They have rebellion in Arzawa. They have They have Seha, which is now taken away from them and put under the Mycenaean influence. It was put underneath the authority of Atpas, the governor of Miletus. and Lesbos is also put under the control of Atpas, of Miletus. So it is possible that Lesbos was perhaps the island in question, because it does appear that is that well, we'll fall into the black hole if we go back to discussing these islands. So we'll stay away from that. We do know that some refugees escaped to Lesbos, and they were not returned to the Hittites. And we do know that Seha is now under the control or authority of Atpas, of Miletus. Nevertheless, the Hittites are sending their expeditionary force under General Kasu to the area to fight against the Mycenaeans and the Mycenaean-backed forces. The Hittite army arrives to the Seha land, they march through the land, and they request military support from Manapatar junta of Seha in accordance to the vassalage agreement they had with Seha. However, Manapatar junta makes excuse that he is ill, or he may I believe that he cited his illness as a reason why he's unable to provide help. He's unable to join General Kasu on the campaign, and thus the Hittites continue on their own. They go to the Wilusa, and there's a battle of Wilusa between General Kasu on one side and the Mycenaean forces on another side. As a result of this, we have negotiations between the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. The outcome is that Ahhiyawa and Hatti make peace, which is later further confirmed by the Alaksandu Treaty. So a person that rules Wilusa at the moment is newly installed King Alaksandu, or Alexander of Troy, known to the Hittites as Alaksandu of Wilusa. We do not know if King Alaksandu was put there as a result of the Hittite intervention, or if he was an individual installed in Wilusa by the Mycenaeans. We do not know that. Obviously, Alaksandu or Alexander is a Greek name, so it does imply that either a Greek or a Greek related ruling house was now in charge of Wilusa. So is it possible that the Mycenaeans intervened first and then put Alexander on the throne, and then the Hittites arrived, and then as a result of battle and negotiations, a settlement was reached that Alexander would nominally accept vassalage to the Hittites, but the fact that he was installed there by the Mycenaeans was good enough to the Mycenaeans to agree to such terms? Or was he installed there? I don't see how the Hittites would install a Greek on the Wilusan throne on their own. But either way, the correct answer is that we do not know who put him there. We do know that by the end of the conflict, by the end of these negotiations, Alexander is the king of Wilusa, and he does accept overlordship of the Hittite king, originally Muwatalli and then his successor. So the outcome is that we have this Alaksandu treaty, and also one of the outcomes is Manapatar junta, king of Seha, who failed to provide aid to the Hittites, is now deposed from the Sehan throne by the Hittites, and he's succeeded by Manapa Kurunta, possibly succeeded by Manapa Kurunta. And thus the conflict over Wilusa ends, And next up, we have the Alaksandu Treaty, which is a direct outcome of the conflict. And before we move on with the Alaksandu Treaty, and by the way, we have entered the third hour of the broadcast. We are currently live for 2 hours and 4 minutes. Luis Aldam is wondering, Tarhunta refers to the Hittite main god. Can Kurunta refer to the Eblite, referring to the city of Ebla, main god Kuru? Uh, this is possible. I'm not an expert on Ebla or Ebla, a Bronze Age kingdom and an important city in the region of Levant. And a great kingdom at some point in time during the Bronze Age, not late Bronze Age, but earlier on. But I'm not an expert on Ebla, so maybe I do not know. Piyamaradu always makes me think of pajamas. Well, yeah. Seha definitely controls the main land route to Troy. We confirmed that. It's roughly equivalent to classical Pergamon or Pergamon. This is a good observation. I didn't think about that, but that's a good observation, and that is most likely correct. We have now completed 5 segments and we have 5 to go. A very heavy duty episode this is. I'm not sure if I'm going to go over 2 hours next weekend. So, also, by the way, if you have any suggestions or ideas of content that you would like to see in the coming days or in the next weekend, Estate Care says keep it up. Well, thank you very much, and we have this is done through Super Chat. By the way, if anybody is if anybody is willing to leave a highlighted comment through super chat, it is going to flash like this. I'm sure that many of you are aware of what super chat is, and if you decide to go with super chat, then whatever your question is or your sentence there is a topic of discussion, we will surely discuss that. And back to what I was saying, if you have any suggestions on the future episodes when it comes to the live format, just let me know. Leave it in the comments here, and that's perhaps something that we're gonna go with. Right now, I do know that we will likely do 2 more lives in 2 lives in the coming week. I'm not sure about the topics. I haven't thought of them. I'll probably think of something on the fly, but if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. Now back to the the topic of the day. Conflict over Wilusa is over, and it is sealed between the Mycenaeans and the Hittites, and it is also sealed between the Trojans and the Hittites. And the Trojans or Wilusans and the Hittites seal it through the Alaksandu Treaty in the early 13th century BC. So the treaty signed by King Alaksandu on one side and originally very likely King Muwatalli on the Hittite side, but then his successor afterwards. And in the entering the third hour, I need to refresh my memory on who this exact successor is, and we are talking about King Mursili III. So Mursili III, he succeeds Muwatalli II in the early 13th century, and he is likely the one, or either him or his successor Hattusili III, who succeeds Mursili shortly afterwards. We are not. Well, it is believed that either Mursili or Hattusili was an individual which sealed the deal with Alaksandu. Either way, the treaty signed in approximately 1280 BC, so likely the reign of Muwatalli II or his successor, Mursili III, very likely, actually possible. So in the 3D, we have Hittite recognition of Alaksandu as the king of Wilusa, so this is reaffirmed. We have Hittite pledge of protection if the throne in Wilusa is disputed. So this indicates that Alaksandu was not perhaps originally meant to be a king. There's a possible reason for a dispute because he's a ruler, and in the treaty itself, the Hittite king seemingly downplays the father to son succession, indicating that Alexander was not a son of previous Trojan king, but he was some way, somehow put on the throne as a result of the Hittite Mycenaean conflict, or he was put on the throne and then he was the reason why the conflict broke out, and then he was kept on the throne and his kingship guaranteed by the Hittites in the treaty. We do not know. These are only speculations on my part. We have Wilusa and its obligations. It is to provide military to the Hittite Empire in case of war. And in a certain case, I believe if the war is in Western Anatolia, the king of Wilusa is to join on the Hittite expedition. The Mycenaean reaction to this treaty was nominal peace and continuation of anti-Hittite activities. We have aid to anti-Hittite rebels in Asia Minor, and this is when we arrive to the next segment number 7, Piyamaradu. So Piyamaradu is well known in this community, well known around this channel. He is the ultimate anti-Hittite warlord of Western Anatolia in the late Bronze Age, an anti-Hittite warlord supported by the Ahhiyawans, and he's a possible descendant of Arzawa nobility. He was not defeated and destroyed by the Hittites. That's very important, as he had great longevity, and he was active during the reigns of no less than four, or as many as four, but no less than three Hittite kings during the reign of Muwatalli II, Mursili III, Hattusili III, and Tudhaliya IV. He is mentioned even by Tudhaliya IV. He starts his rebellion, as we have already mentioned. He started this during the Wilusan conflict. during the time of the Wilusan conflict. We do not know if he was directly a part of that campaign that led to the Wilusan conflict, but or he acted simultaneously in accordance to the Mycenaean plans and strategy. But he did create a rebellion, and he took the city of Yalanda in the Arzawan lands. That's a city located a little bit to the east of Ephesus. So it was inland to the east of Ephesus, but still in the Arzawan heartland. He embarks on a campaign in Sehal Riverland. He does not depose the king of Seha, but he removes, deattaches Seha from the Hittite authority, puts it under the authority of Atpas of Miletus, and he's possibly involved in the Wilusan conflict itself. There's no confirmation on that, so we do not know. He was definitely involved in Seha. Whether or not he took part in the battle for Wilusa, we are not sure, but he continues his activities in Arzawa. We do know that. So following the Alaksandu Treaty and the end of Mycenaean-Hittite hostilities, he continues to be sponsored by the Mycenaeans, and he takes chunks of the Arzawa lands for himself. His capital city is the city of Yalanda. He also set sights to the Hittite allies in the region. He was unable to permanently put Seha within Mycenaean hegemony. We do know that General Kasu arrived with the expeditionary force, and the Hittites installed a new king in the Seha land, back to the Hittite sphere of influence. In the meantime, Piyamaradu turned to southeast towards the Luca lands. He marches to the borders between Arzawa, Luca, and the Hittite borderland, where the city of Atarima is located. So the city of Atarima is a Hittite outpost, perhaps a Hittite stronghold, somewhere in the general area between Luca, Arzawa, and the Hittite lower land, I would say, which corresponds to historical Pamphylia. Either way, Piyamaradu invades, he burns the city down, he destroys it, and he burns the royal compound together with it. This triggers fear not only uh, by the inhabitants, who are now obviously gone, but in the surrounding region of Luca. In Luca, we have many cities. We have Luca lands are not a single kingdom. So Luca lands, or Lucia, consist of several or many polities or city-states, and some of them are aligned with the Hittites, some of them are aligned with the Mycenaeans, some of them switch their allegiance according to the geopolitical situation at the moment. So Luca lands are really a collection of Lycian city-states and petty states of the late Bronze Age. So those who were allied with the Hittites, obviously they are panicking right now, because in their neighborhood, a very important city of Atarima is destroyed by Piyamaradu, and now we have Luca lands appealing to both Hittites and to Mycenaeans to send somebody to calm the situation down, because they are clearly afraid of what Piyamaradu might do next. They clearly did not expect Atarima to be completely destroyed. So Luca people appear to both Achaeans and Hatti, and first we have Tavagalava arriving to the Luca lands. So who is Tavagalava? Tavagalava is a brother of the king of Ahhiyawan. So Tavagalava is an immensely powerful individual. He's likely located in the city of Miletus at the time. He's a brother of the great king of Ahhiyawan, a brother of the Wanax of the Mycenaean Greece, a second most powerful person in the Mycenaean Greece. Tavagalava is obviously a Hittite rendering of the name, and the scholars, likely very correctly, hypothesize that this is a Hittite rendering of name Eteocles or Eteocles. We do have a linear B Mycenaean version of the name, which is very close to Tavagalava, is Etevokeleve or Etevokeleves, which, if we were to pronounce, would be something like Eteocleves or something of the sort. If it is impossible to reconstruct the original late Bronze Age Mycenaean Greek pronunciation, but Eteocles is what the Greek name, what the original Greek name is. It's Eteocles, Eteocles, or Eteokeleves in as it is written in the Linear B records. And so Eteocles is a brother of the king of Ahhiyawan. And Eteocles is also a prominent name in Greek mythology. We have the most famous Eteocles is king of Thebes. We do know a myth of Polynices and Eteocles, and the myth of seven against Thebes, where the brothers were fighting over the throne, and one brother stayed, another was exiled. He sought help from the Argives in Argos, and we have a war of seven against Thebes, and the subsequent war of the Epigoni, a very famous story of Greek mythology. We have other individuals named Eteocles in Greek mythology also. We have Eteocles of Orchomenus, I believe, an early king of Orchomenus, also called Eteocles. So, and we have uh, Eteocles recorded in the Linear B record. So it was an often encountered name. It was a common Greek name, so to say, in the late Bronze Age. So Tavagalava likely corresponds to Eteocles, and this Eteocles in question is not a mythological Eteocles of the seven against Thebes. It is not a mythological king of Orchomenus. It is a brother of the great king of Ahhiyawan. And he arrives to the area. He marches with his companions to the Luca lands. He's obviously a Boeotian name, Luis Aldames says. Well, I would have to double check. We do have two Boeotians in Greek mythology with such name, that's correct. I believe that Eteocles is also recorded in Pylos in Linear B, I believe. So I would say, based on that, it would be a widespread name in Mycenaean Greece. But either way, unfortunately, we do not know the name of the Achaean king himself. We only know the name of his brother because he is recorded as arriving to the Luca lands, probably based on the request or to secure whatever Lycian city was loyal to the Achaeans. Eteocles or Tavagalava, he arrived there. He's a person of great authority. He's a person of great authority when it comes to Piyamaradu as well. So we do see that Piyamaradu does look to Eteocles as a person of authority. So he's clearly, well, he's sponsored by the Mycenaeans. So he is clearly underneath Eteocles in the grand scheme of things. Whether or not his actions are coordinated with Eteocles or perhaps Atpas of Miletus, that would be more likely. We do not know, but he is sponsored by the Mycenaeans, and Mycenaeans are happy to see him deal damage to the Hittite interests in the area. Luis Aldamis, okay, Pylos is interesting. I would have to double check this. I do not want to claim this for 100%. I do know that the vast majority or a great chunk of the Linear B records is from Pylos. And if I remember correctly, in one of the records, Eteocles was mentioned. Whether or not it was from another place, Knossos or even Thebes. Thebes was a great source of Linear B records, but I believe it was Pylos, but I would have to double check. I'll double check after the episode is over because it would take me some time to go and find the Linear B records where the name is mentioned. But I will, if it's not Pylos, I will let you know. But I do believe it's Pylos. So pro-Achaean, Lucian cities in Luca lands, they appeal to Tawagalava at Theocles. He arrives to the area, he reasserts Mycenaean influence is his part in the Mycenaean influenced part of Luca lands, and the Hittites quickly arrive afterwards to do the same. And the Hittite king is marching to the area. He stops nearby in the Hittite controlled area and he exchanges messages with Piyamaradu. And now we have a back and forth between Piyamaradu and the great king of the Hittites. And by this time, we are likely talking about Hattusili III. By this time, we are talking about roughly 1270, 1260 BC. And likely King Hattusili III is the one who arrives to the area and he tries to deal with Piyamaradu. He cannot deal with brute force at start, so they are trying to negotiate with Piyamaradu. So Hattusili III arrives to the city of Salapa, which is on the border but within the Hittite controlled area, and there's back and forth between the two. Piyamaradu requests that the Hittite king either comes himself or that he sends his son and the successor, the crown prince, to meet him. And Hattusili obliges. He does send his son, likely to Halia, the fort. He does send him to negotiate with Piyamaradu, but Piyamaradu refuses to meet him. He demands to be recognized as a local king first before any negotiation takes place. According to the Hittites, he is unjustifiably afraid that the Hittites would do harm to him if he was to go to the Hittites to negotiate directly, which is likely correct. So Piyamaradu had good reason not to meet with the Hittites on the Hittite terms, where he could be ambushed or otherwise attacked or captured or killed by the Hittites. He does not want to take the risk. He wants to be recognized as a legitimate king in the area, perhaps nominally vassal to the Hittites. He apparently concedes that, but the Hittites know very well. They have experience with Madduwatta in the previous century. They know well that nominal recognition of Piyamaradu would do them no good, even if he's officially a vassal. He would not behave as one because he's clearly sponsored, clearly allied, and clearly heavily dependent on the Mycenaeans. So the Hittites refused. There is no peace, no deal is reached. The Hittites are getting ready to march on Madduwatta, on Piyamaradu's stronghold in the city of Yalanda. So Hattusili himself, he marches to Yalanda, and he said one of the requests of the Hittites was, if Piyamaradu wants to be recognized as a local ruler, let him retreat from Yalanda first, let Hittites capture Yalanda and reinstall their power there, and then they can talk about recognizing Piyamaradu. But Piyamaradu does not leave the city voluntarily. In fact, the Hittite forces and the Arzawan rebel forces fight 3 battles in the land of Arzawa. And the battles are very hard fought. Piyamaradu is apparently not an easy man to defeat, and they are so difficult to the Hittites that in one of the battles, the Hittite king himself, Hattusili III, is forced to uh, dismount and fight on foot together with soldiers. It's very critical. And in another battle, the Hittite army is ambushed by Lahurzi, the brother of Piyamaradu. So very tough battles. Hittites eventually emerge victorious in a sense that Piyamaradu is forced to leave Yalanda. He's forced to withdraw. So the Hittites manage to defeat Piyamaradu. So he withdraws with great difficulty, and they enter Yalanda and they destroy the city. They are very furious. They know that Yalanda is a heartland Arzawan city. It is anti-Hittite. There's no installation of another ruler there. There's straight destructions as far as the Hittites are concerned. So they punish the city severely, and Piyamaradu flees to Miletus. He flees to Atpa or Atpas, the Mycenaean governor of the city. And the Hittites are furious with Piyamaradu. They want his head. They send messengers to Miletus. They want Piyamaradu extradited to the Hittites. Obviously, well, the great king Hattusili himself he was ambushed. He was forced to fight on foot for his life. He barely survived. Likely, plausibly, he was in a very threatening situation. Not very often does the Hittite king fight on foot. This is likely one of the only, if not the only, record that we know of that the king of the Hittites was forced to fight on foot. So he wants Piyamaradu extradited, and the Mycenaean king, he says the letter to Hattusili, he says that he has instructed Atpas to extradite Piyamaradu to the Hittites. And the Hittite king arrives to Miletus to take Piyamaradu to capture him, but he does not find him there. Piyamaradu, he leaves Miletus and he goes further to the Mycenaean islands. He relocates to the Mycenaean islands. So it is clear that the Mycenaeans have no plans to extradite Piyamaradu to the Hittites. They let him flee to their territory in the sea. They let him escape. And King Hattusili is furious. He is aware that this was the Mycenaean game, that Piyamaradu is a Mycenaean-backed person. Obviously, he's not able to accuse the Mycenaeans publicly. He is in Miletus. Obviously, he's with his army, but he does not want war with the Mycenaeans, especially at this time where he barely survived. He had tough battles with essentially rebel army. He's not ready for a full-fledged war with the Mycenaeans. There's no way, especially since Miletus is the main stronghold of the Mycenaeans, and it's surrounded by the Aegean Sea to the west. And the Hittites are no naval power. They are not able to effectively wage war on the Achaeans. So Hattusili arrives to Miletus, Piyamaradu flees, and Atpas and Avayanas, likely Atpas's brother, they are forced to listen to the Hittite accusations and so on, and they swear an oath to Hattusili that they would send a message back to the king of Ahhiyawa and report on everything that has transpired. And this is also mentioned in the Tavagalava letter, a letter sent by the Hittite king to the king of Ahhiyawa, where everything mentioned here is uh, also is said. Well, this is basically this is that's the main source that we have for all of these events, the Tavagalava letter, the letter that was sent by Hattusili to the king of Ahhiyawa. So in the letter we have all of these transgressions, all of Piyamaradu's offenses reported, sent to the Ahhiyawan king. Obviously, Hattusili is very respectful to the Ahhiyawan king. He does not want war, as we have mentioned, and he repeatedly titles the Ahhiyawan king as my brother, which means my equal. And only, as we have mentioned, only the Pharaoh of Egypt, the king of Babylon, the king of Hittites, and apparently, as far as the Hittites are concerned, the king of Ahhiyawa have enjoyed this status. So Assyrian Empire is not yet an empire at this point in time, and they are not considered to be a great power at this point in time. So as far as the Hittites are concerned, only themselves, Egypt, Babylon, and the Mycenaean Greece. And this would soon change because the kingdom of Mitanni is long gone, and we have rise of Assyria. So very shortly, Assyria would be recognized as a great kingdom by the Hittites. Very shortly, only decades, in only a few decades, Assyria would be recognized as a great kingdom. So Hattusili suggests three options to the Achaean king in this instance. One is to ask Piyamaradu or force Piyamaradu to go to the Hittite lands and reconcile with the Hittites. And the Hattusili says that the Hittites would guarantee that Piyamaradu would not be harmed. So they want a reconciliation. They are guaranteeing that they would not kill, they would not capture Piyamaradu, but if he was to come to them and reconcile and accept the Hittite authority, the situation would be solved, according to Hattusili. That's one option. Second option, but he's aware that Piyamaradu is not going to do that. He's not going to take that risk. And he did not want to meet Hittites when he had his army with him in the Luka lands and the Arzawa lands. He definitely does not want to meet them now when he is essentially exiled in Mycenaean controlled islands, but apparently he is still fairly powerful because he is levying threats against the Hittites. He says that he still has his army with him, his companions, and he apparently managed to withdraw with his army he managed to withdraw from Yalanda before the Hittites would destroy the city, and he managed to keep his soldiers together with him in the Mycenaean exile, which is very interesting. It's a great indicator that the Mycenaeans were very happy to have an anti-Hittite person under their control and likely organized many of these events themselves. So the second option that the Hittites suggest is to cease hostilities if he wants to stay in Ahhiyawa. So if Piyamaradu does not want to go meet the Hittites, if he wants to stay in the Mycenaean territory, then he should not attack the Hittites anymore. That's the second option. The third option is if he still wants to attack the Hittites, if he still wants to be hostile to Hattusili III, then the Ahhiyawan king should let him be hostile, but not from the Ahhiyawan territory. He should let Piyamaradu go to another land, like Mysia or Masa, as it is mentioned in this letter, or Karkia or Karia, and go be hostile from there so that the Hittites are able to invade because they are not willing to invade or have war with the Mycenaeans. Luis Aldames says empty threats. Well, they are empty threats when it comes to the great scheme of things, I believe. He's not able to really threaten the Hittites directly, but he does, perhaps he represented a threat of constant raids into the Hittite territory. Perhaps he was not able to take Arzawa or take another city or hold it effectively, but he was definitely able to conduct raids to attack from the sea. He likely had the ships under his control, and or possibly had some ships. He must have had some Mycenaean backing enough for him to be able to levy those threats. I agree, not grave threats, but he was still an irritating factor when it comes to the Hittites. He was still able to cause some problems. So we do not know what the Mycenaean response was. Likely, it was likely not very positive to the Hittites because Piyamaradu continued to be mentioned in the very negative context. He was mentioned by he was mentioned by Hattusili's successor, Tudhalia IV, who was likely the crown prince who went to meet him in those Lucalan's negotiations when Piyamaradu turned him down. So Tudhalia IV succeeds Hattusili III on the Hittite throne. Piyamaradu or Priam the Irritator, says Luis Aldames. Yeah, well, that's that's interesting. So now we go to the segment number 8 as we enter the reign of Tudhalia IV of the Hittites. We are now in the second half of the 13th century BC. We are talking about roughly 1240 BC, a time when Tudhalia IV succeeds to the throne and becomes the new king of the Hittites. And by this time, Piyamaradu is very old. So he was active since the very beginning of the century. He was active since Muwatalli IV, a king who lived at the end. His reign spanned throughout the end of the previous century also. So Piyamaradu has been active for a long, long, long time, and he was a threat to the Hittites for a long time. I believe by this time only his presence and the fact that he's still alive and still around and has his companions with him is irritating enough to the Hittites. And Tudhalia IV does not need to worry about Piyamaradu for too long, because by the time Tudhalia is communicating with his vassals in western Anatolia, Piyamaradu likely passes away. So he likely passes of old age in the early years of Tudhalia's reign. And that concludes Piyamaradu. And now we have Tudhalia, we have the petty Hittite vassal states in western Anatolia, and we have the decline of Mycenaean power in western Anatolia. With Piyamaradu gone, so goes the the Mycenaean projection of power in the area, because at this time we have a loss of Miletus when it comes to the Mycenaeans. We do not know how exactly and why exactly this happened, but at some point early into Tudhalia's reign, Miletus is no longer under the Mycenaean control, or appears to be no longer under the Mycenaean control, and that's where we arrive to the Milawata letter. Milawata obviously means Miletus in the Hittite language. And this letter is communication between Tudhalia IV and a vassal ruler in western Anatolia, and we are likely talking about King Tarkasnava of Mira. And there are three issues in that we are dealing with in this letter. So first is Miletus or Milawata, which serves as the name of the letter itself, as decided by the scholars. So Miletus is apparently no longer under Achaean control. We do not have any mentions of Ahhiyawa in this letter when it comes to the city of Miletus. We have an issue of Milawata's borders. So the city of Miletus is no longer under the Mycenaean control, but the borders are not the same, because Miletus used to control significant area in Asia Minor, in the coastal surroundings. As you can see on the map right now, a good portion of Karkia or Caria was under the control of the stronghold of Miletus. The Mycenaean used this city to control and exert influence in all of western Anatolia. So not all of this area is now within the territory of Miletus after the Mycenaean withdrawal from the area. And there is an issue with this vassal king, likely Tarkasnava of Mira, as we've mentioned. The Hittite king is not happy with Tarkasnava, and he is not happy with unresolved matter of the cities of Utima and Atria. And these cities are likely taken by the king of Mira, but they are not delegated to him by the Hittite king. So it is kind of a situation where the Hittites are trying to exert influence in the area, still trying to decide who's going to get which territory, which portion of the territory of Miletus. But apparently it is not the Hittites who dictate this. So very likely or possibly it is not the Hittites who conquer Miletus, since they are trying to set the borders and they are having difficulties with it. And we do know by the time of the Trojan War, it is the Carians, the dominant local group of tribes from the area, who are in charge of Miletus, and they are on the side of the Trojans by the time of the Trojan War. And we are talking about 1200 to 1180 BC when it comes to the historical time of Troy's destruction, where we believe the Trojan War took place historically, about a time period between late 13th and early 12th century BC. And we have a Zadeo in the chat. Shout out to him. It's approximately 7:30 a.m. in Greece, I believe. So, Zadeo, welcome to the live show. This we are slowly completing the 3 hours of the broadcast. We are currently 2 hours and 50 minutes in. So, in 10 minutes, we're going to be. This is going to enter the fourth hour of the live broadcast. So back to the Milawata letter, we know that Miletus is clearly out of Mycenaean control, possibly taken by Carians, the native tribe of the region. And we do not know how exactly this transpired. We do know that this signals, or we assume that this signals Mycenaean decline in general, but specifically in Asia Minor, in Western Anatolia. We do not have any land holdings, and Mycenaean Greece is now restricted to the mainland Greece, Crete, and the Aegean Islands. There are no more holdings on the Anatolian mainland. So the first issue is the issue of the territory distribution of the city of Miletus, and the Hittite king has a problem with how this vassal king Tarkasnava of Mira is approaching the issue. He thinks that he is using the opportunity to take some of the territories for himself, which further signals that the Hittite power in the region is also waning. It is also on the decline because the Hittites are not intervening militarily anymore. They are trying to negotiate with their own vassals. They're expressing they're not satisfied with their own vassals in the area. Perhaps these vassal states, Mira in this instance, is using the opportunity to further their own power, to gain more independence and get some of the influence and hegemony in the region for themselves. The second issue is the issue of King Valmu of Wilusa. So, Valmu, a ruler of Wilusa or historical Troy in the mid 13th century BC, is deposed. We do not know who deposed him. We do not know. Well, he was, according to Tudhalia, the powers in Velusa, likely referring to the aristocracy of Velusa, they chose a new king. They deposed Velusa. They chose a new king, perhaps because I'm sorry, Valmu. They deposed Valmu. They chose new king in Velusa, perhaps because Valmu was a pro-Hittite king, but he is now deposed, and Velusa now seeks independence of the Hittite influence, much like the Hittites are accusing the kingdom of Mira of doing. So we do see a clear decline of the Hittite power in the area. So Valmu is replaced by another ruler who is apparently unfriendly to the Hittites, or Perhaps he's not unfriendly, perhaps he's just independent. Maybe he just doesn't want to be a Hittite vassal. Tudhaliya wants to reinstall Valmu in Wilusa, so he asks Tarkasnava to send Valmu to him because Valmu is apparently granted refuge on the court of Mira, and Tudhaliya wants him on the Hittite territory so he can equip him with army and send him back to Wilusa to reclaim a throne, to reclaim the Wilusan throne for Valmu. And he also requires Tarkasnava's help on this issue. Whether or not this the outcome of this is unknown because we do not have any more correspondence when it comes to this particular issue. My guess is that Valmu was not reinstalled in Wilusa because the Hittite power in the area just continued to wane, so it is unlikely that they magically reasserted themselves in Wilusa because only decades later they are fighting for their lives in the Hittite mainland. So it is likely that this is just a start of Hittite decline, which would only accelerate and get worse in the following decades. And the third issue is, or the third relevant thing that we have in this letter is a mention of a Piyamaradu, and context is unclear. It was some actions or some events that are connected to him, and he is mentioned by Tudhaliya in a past context, and it was something related to the situation involving the king, the vassal king in question, so presumably Tarkasnava of Mira. Perhaps, perhaps he had some kind of relations. Who knows? We do not know that because the letter is fragmentary. We do not have the complete letter, unfortunately. We do know that the Hittite king levied many accusations against the father of Tarkasnava, that he was hostile to the Hittites, that he himself organized rebellion. So we do have some insight here, some background. If Mira was involved in anti-Hittite rebellion, perhaps both Hittite, well, we can make an educated guess that both Hittite and Mycenaean power in the area was on the decline. So there was not only a rebellion against the Mycenaean power in Miletus, there was also a rebellion against the Hittite power in Mira, orchestrated by the father of Tarkasnava, which was put down, and now Tarkasnava himself is also accused of doing hostile acts against the Hittites. But from this point on, we do not have any records of further Hittite military interventions when it comes to these vassal states. We do not have records of interventions in Wilusa. We do not have records of intervention in Mira, and presumably not in Miletus, and likely not in Seha either. So with this letter, we conclude Mycenaean-Hittite correspondence after the Milawata letter. As we go back to the segments, the next two, the final two, are the Trojan War, where we have no direct Hittite involvement, no records of Hittite involvement, not on the mythological side and not on the historical side either. Well, we do not have any historical records, written records. We only have archaeological evidence that Troy 7a was destroyed by fire as a result of war in early 12th century BC. At this time, the Hittites were fighting for their lives themselves in Hattusa, so they likely would have not been involved as a significant factor in historical Trojan War. Luis Aldama says the brief rise of Troy as a regional power on their own right. Well, that is correct because Walmu was deposed, perhaps the last pro-Hittite king in Troy, and he was not deposed by the Mycenaeans because the Mycenaeans themselves were deposed from Miletus. So Wilusa or Troy was independent. Miletus was likely independent under the Carian, under Carian inhabitants who are likely the natives of the area, and Mira and Seha likely perhaps nominally independent, perhaps nominally under the Hittite influence, nominally under the Hittite vassalage, but at least when it comes to Mira, apparently a lot of hostile activities towards the Hittites. So we have a clear decline of both Mycenaean and Hittite power in Western Anatolia, and this is likely the last of the Hittite hegemony that we see in the area. The Ancient History Gamer says hi, Wanax. Hi to you. We have Gregory Michael Nixon becoming exclusive YouTube member. So welcome to the club and thank you for joining us. If you have any comment, any suggestion, anything that you would like to see moving forward in this week or coming weeks on the live WanaxTV program, let me know and we'll discuss that. Gregory Michael Nixon, first comment. We're talking about Milawata letter. Okay. He says, okay, so let me go through the chat real quick. Gregory says, Dear Wanax, disappointed to see how much you have embraced mythology and at the same time ignored actual history. I'm not sure if you're referring to the earlier videos that we have done years ago where we used to combine historical records and find equivalents in the mythological stories. We used to do that in those early videos, but I really try not to mix mythology with history too much, and whenever there is talk of mythology as corresponding to the historical context, I try to make sure to let you know that we're talking about the mythology here, because mythology is not very reliable in most instances. Sometimes we can find some things which do correspond to historical situation of the period, but I agree that we should not rely on Greek mythology too much when it comes to these historical events that we're trying to cover. And Gregory also says, Wanax, with your talent for historical hyperbole, I would love to see an episode on the last kings of the Hittite Empire, especially the very last Suppiluliuma II, who is so often ignored. That's a good topic for the episode. Well, thank you for I guess, my talent for hyperbole. I tried not to do that. If you would like to show me where you think that occurs, I'll be happy to take it into account and perhaps see what we can do about it. I try not to I try to separate mythology from history in some instances, as we see in the Trojan War, which is the next segment. We can make some correspondence. Greek mythological accounts are the only thing that we have for the Trojan War. And when we say Trojan War, in this context, we're talking about the archaeological destruction or historical destruction of the archaeological site of Troy 7a in the early 12th century BC. And with that being said, we are moving to the segment number 9, and that is the Trojan War. The Trojan War is best known as described in the Iliad, and it is very important for us to mention that Iliad and the Odyssey are compiled in the 8th century BC, which is several centuries after the collapse of the Mycenaean Greece, collapse of the late Bronze Age, and it is several centuries of the absence of any written records, because from the time period of approximately 1180, 1170 BC, we lose Linear B as a result of vast destruction throughout the Mycenaean Greece. We lose Linear B records, and we have no more records after that. We only have archaeological records, not written records, which do show that Mycenae was sacked, it suffered destruction. They also do show that Tiryns did not suffer destruction at that time in the early 12th century. But we do know, most importantly, we do know that Troy, the historical site of Troy, or Wilusa as it is known to the Hittites, did historically suffer destruction in the early 12th century BC. We can date the destruction of Troy 7a to around 1180 BC, which perfectly corresponds with Eratosthenes' date for the fall of Troy. I believe he places Trojan War as beginning at 1194 and the fall of Troy at 1184 BC. So approximate date of 1180, as confirmed by archaeological evidence for the destruction of Troy, corresponds to the mythological story of the Trojan War, or should I say the date of the mythological Trojan War as dated by the ancient Greeks, or Eratosthenes to be more specific. Some other writers had different dates, ranging from 1250 till I believe 1100 BC or so, but the most accepted date is 1194 to 1184 BC. And as such, it is important to make a distinction between historical destruction, which we do not know much about. So we presume that the Achaeans would have destroyed Troy at this point in time. There is no contemporary records that talk about this war, so there's no contemporary records to confirm that it was Agamemnon, that it was the Achaeans who did do this historically. The only record that we have is the Iliad, which is a result of several centuries of oral tradition. The war was obviously remembered by the contemporary Mycenaean Greeks of the time. It was passed orally from to generation throughout several centuries. Each generation likely added some bits and pieces to the story, maybe removed, maybe forgot some other bits and pieces of the original story, and as a result, by the 8th century BC, several centuries later, we have a story of the Trojan War, which is not a historical story. It is it is what the Greeks remembered of the war at that time when they wrote it down. That is what Iliad is, mixed up with many clearly mythological uh, uh, factors, such as gods who apparently play active role. Well, we have to be aware that this is very early on in the development of the Greek alphabet, and these epic poetry, these epic poems are very famed for having gods and divine presence on full display in these stories. So same goes for the Odyssey, same goes for the Iliad and all of the other poems of the epic cycle of the time period. So, what do we know about the potential Hittite involvement? Was there any Hittite involvement in the historical Trojan War? The simple answer is most likely no. There are no contemporary records of the involvement. There are no any records of the war itself, so that doesn't say much. But what we do know is that Hattusa, the Hittite capital, was destroyed at a similar time, and that the Hittite Empire itself was destroyed and ceased to exist around the same time. So the Hittites would have not been able to take active part in the historical Trojan War. So the answer is that the Hittites likely were not involved in the destruction of Troy 7a. We there's always a room to speculate, to devise different theories, and one of those interesting speculations is a possible vague mention of the Hittites in the Odyssey. Well, not necessarily Hittites, but we do have a mention of a tribe or people called the Keteioi. The Keteioi, or the Keti as they were known to the Egyptians, I believe, very similar when it comes to pronunciation, and we do have a story where they are mentioned. They are actually mentioned in the Odyssey as in the past context when referring to the war, and they are apparently led by Eurypylus, the son of Telephus. And Telephus also happens to be similar to Telepinu. We do know Telepinu was an early Hittite king known for the proclamation of Telepinu in the old Hittite kingdom, and we do know that Telepinu was also a Hittite god in the Hittite religion. So, was this a vague memory of a people they once did know as Keteioi? We're talking about the Greeks. We do not know. It's just speculation, but it's a very prominent theory when it comes to the Hittite involvement in the Trojan War. Realistically, it is very unlikely that they could have taken part in anything involving Troy in 1180 BC, much less play a significant factor. So the Keteioi are themselves not described in Greek mythology as related to the Hittites. The Greeks had no awareness of the Hittites' existence in the classical period. We're talking about the classical and archaic era Greeks. the Greeks of the the time period of the development of the Greek alphabet. They clearly had no memory of the Hittites. They called Keteioi a people who are a part of Mycenaean tribes. So they called them Mycenaeans. They considered Keteioi to be Mycenaeans, which is a tribe perhaps related to the Phrygians, perhaps related to the Thracians, perhaps a topic for another time. Ultimately, we have Achaean victory and destruction of Troy, according to the Iliad, and we certainly do have destruction of Troy. We do have archaeological confirmation on that. But do we have Achaean victory? That's a great question, because very shortly, almost immediately afterwards, we have a start of a violent destruction of the Mycenaean Greece. We have destruction of Pylos, followed by sack or significant destruction of Mycenae and other Mycenaean sites of the area. But either way, Troy is no more. As of 1180 BC, Wilusa is destroyed, and the historical Bronze Age Troy is gone. Which brings us to the final segment of this heavy duty episode. Even I'm getting a little bit tired. It's past 1 in the morning right now. So we are at 3 hours and 15 minutes, excuse me. So it's been a very long episode. And the final segment of the show is the Bronze Age collapse. Now we are exiting the area of Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts because there are no more Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts that we are speaking of at this moment in the early 12th century BC. There is perhaps an indirect conflict, considering a possibility that some of the Mycenaean Greeks would have been a part of the so-called Sea Peoples, who are responsible for the destruction of many of the Bronze Age kingdoms, including the Hittites themselves. So perhaps we do have some kind of an extension or of a spin-off of the Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts here. Luis Aldamis says Keteioi, Keta, and Hatti or Hittites, it's obvious. Yes, I agree. I agree. Perhaps Keteioi would have been a fragment of a memory when it comes to the Hittites, but it is very theoretical and speculative from looking from this point, and the classical Greeks indeed had no idea about the Hittites. Interdict says you're doing well. Thank you very much. It's been kind of exhausting, to be honest, but not very much because of the episode itself. It's been a long day overall. So either way, back to the Bronze Age collapse. So first we have destruction of Troy, which we have mentioned, and we have collapse of the Mycenaean palace centers, we have collapse of the Hittite Empire, and we have destruction of various cities and kingdoms of the Eastern Mediterranean as perpetrated by a group known as the Sea Peoples, as recorded by the ancient Egyptians. When it comes to the collapse of the Mycenaean Greece, it starts roughly at the same time or shortly after the destruction of historical Troy. We have destruction of the city of Pylos, which has been one of the most important, most powerful, the wealthiest and most influential of the Mycenaean palace centers, right behind Mycenae. It was on the same level as Knossos, as Thebes, and perhaps even bigger than Thebes in population. So Pylos is suddenly destroyed. We have some of the Linear B tablets dating to 1180 BC or slightly later, mentioning or slightly earlier. It's difficult to date it to a year, but let's say 1180 BC. We have mentions of preparations against a sea attack on Pylos, and shortly afterwards we have destruction of the city of Pylos, the second most important palatial center of the Greek mainland, or of Peloponnese at least, has been destroyed. And shortly following that, we have sack of Mycenae and destruction of significant portion of Mycenae. We have destruction by fire of the palace, Mycenaean palace, and the granary area and the town center area, I believe, survive for another close to a century. But Mycenae itself is significantly damaged and reduced to a minor palatial center from this point on. We do have attempts of rebuilding when it comes to Mycenae, not to a large scale, to a smaller scale. Mycenae is rebuilt, but we have Tiryns, the neighboring stronghold. We have Tiryns increasing its size, increasing in population. So Tiryns itself was not destroyed. It was protected by the famed Tyrrhentian walls, the high walls of Tiryns. So there are several theories of what might have transpired throughout the later part of the century. We do know that the Mycenaean Greece was not completely destroyed. It was greatly reduced. It was reduced to an area of Argolis and the city of Tiryns and its surroundings. We have, I believe, that Medea was also destroyed. Uh, Mycenae was damaged and reduced to a minor center. We have Argos, which has been a mid-sized settlement, not exactly a great palace center. And we have Tiryns as the chief settlement of the area, perhaps a place where of refuge after sack of Mycenae. After the sack of Mycenae in about 1180, we have increase of the population of the city of Tiryns, of the palace of Tiryns. So what likely transpired is that many of the refugees, maybe many of the people fleeing Mycenae, fled to Tiryns, the second most important citadel of Argolis. And Tiryns, I believe, rose from approximately 10 to 15,000 to over 20,000 inhabitants, if I'm correct. Don't quote me on this. I have to double check, but at least 15,000 inhabitants, I believe, but likely more. And Tiryns would linger on for another about 75 years before it started fading, before it faded away, because as of this point on, from 1180, we have decline of the Mycenaean Greece greatly, and we are slowly entering a period known as the Greek Dark Ages, where there is no alphabet, no written records, no economic prosperity, no great kingdoms in the area of Greece, and thus we have gradual transformation into what would eventually become Hellenic city-states by the emergence of the Archaic period and the ancient Greek alphabet. When it comes, so Now, if we are going to make parallels with Greek mythology, we would bring the Heraclidae, the descendants of Heracles, who, according to the myth, defeated the final king of Mycenae, Tisamenes. They invaded Peloponnese and they claimed Argos, Sparta, and Messenia for themselves. And thus we have gradual emergence of the tribe of Dorians in Peloponnese. So we do have historical Dorians in the archaic and classical periods who did claim this to be true. They did claim this lineage from the Heraclidae who, in Greek mythology, destroyed Mycenae and defeated the last Mycenaean king, Tisamenes, who was a grandson of Agamemnon in Greek mythology, the son of Orestes. We dealt with this in the previous episode, so more if you want to find out more about the lineage of the Mycenaean royal house, check the previous live episode that we had. Moving on, we have collapse of the Hittites as well. So now we have Shupililiuma II. He's the final king of the Hittite Empire, and he is reigning in the early 12th century BC, and he's dealing with a lot of problems. So first, he has a war against a coalition of petty kingdoms, of what appear to be petty kingdoms in Western Anatolia. He claims to have defeated them, but somehow his realm shrinks, or the Hittite realm shrinks very shortly afterwards. And we have the Sea Peoples invasion, or the emergence of Sea Peoples as recorded by the Egyptians, and their invasion of Alasia, which is the island of Cyprus, their invasion and destruction of Ugarit, which is also recorded in the Hittite records as well. We do have a correspondence between the king of Ugarit and the king of Carchemish, where the king of Ugarit is requesting help. He is in a desperate situation. He's saying that all of his ships are in the land of Luca, helping the Hittites wage war against an enemy, and he also claims that all of his armies are in the land of Hattusa, defending the Hittite capital against the invasion. And only years afterwards, we have destruction of Ugarit and we have destruction of Hattusa. It happens very suddenly, and we also have destruction of Enkomi, the capital of the kingdom of Alasia, located on the island of Cyprus. This all happened around 1180 BC, perhaps slightly afterwards, corresponding to the wider Bronze Age, late Bronze Age collapse, corresponding perhaps to the destruction of the Mycenaean Greece, even destruction of historical Troy. So we have records of battles and struggles for Hattusa, for Ugarit. All of those cities are destroyed. What is recorded by the Egyptians to be a confederation of the peoples of the sea. And they do list these constituents of this alliance. We do know about Denian, the Peleset, the Washesh, the the Ekwesh, and the others, Teresh. I would have to actually get this list to just to make sure we do not forget any constituents of the Sea People. So we are talking about the reign of King Ramses III in Egypt. And he is the one who ultimately defeats the Sea People's coalition. So he mentions Denian, Peleset, Shekelesh, Sherden, Teresh, Teeker, and Weshesh. Some of these peoples are further recorded by the Egyptians. We do know that the Peleset eventually settled the area which we know as Philistine, the area of Gaza, Ascalon, and other Philistine, historical Philistine cities, Ashdod, and others. And this is eventually where the Peleset are settled, as after their battles with the Egyptians. They failed to defeat Egypt. There was a decisive battle of the Nile Delta in 1175 BC, and the Sea Coalition is finally defeated by Ramses III, first both on land and on sea. Both battles are won by the Egyptians, and thus we have the end of the Sea People's campaigns. They do settle in Philistia, the Peleset, who are originating from the island of Crete. Whether or not they have any connections to the Pelasgians of Greek mythology, we do not know, but the Peleset or the Philistinoi they are producing the exact same pottery as the new settlers of Cyprus, and as they are produced in the Aegean Sea. So those people are clearly originating from the area of the Mycenaean Greece. Whether or not they joined whoever destroyed the Mycenaean palace centers, or they just um, joined for another reason willingly for the aims of colonization, of settlement of another areas. We do not know. We do know that they did settle Cyprus. We do have Greek emergence on the island of Cyprus in the 12th century BC, and we do have emergence of Philistia and the Philistines, historical Philistines, in the 12th century BC. And with this, we are going to conclude the episode. We have gone through more than 3 hours. Now we have 3.5 hours of the Mycenaean-Hittite conflicts, beginning with their early clashes at the time of Arnuwanda II, I believe, and Atarsia of Achaia. I'm sorry, we have Arnuwanda the first. That's correct. Arnuwanda the second was a son of Shupiloliuma, older brother of Mursili the second, at the time of the fall of Arzawa. Their predecessor Arnuwanda the first was successor of the old Tudhalia, who defeated the Asuwa League. So from that time we have Mycenaean Hittite, even wars, but mostly proxy wars. Sometimes it escalated to direct battles between the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. Mostly those were proxy wars between their allies, their vassals, and otherwise important constituents of these conflicts. And that concludes the episode. That concludes the episode. We have been live for 3 hours and 30 minutes, which is impressive. It is 1:20 a.m. here on the East Coast. We have Pelasgian skeleton has emerged. He has the date for Cadmus has been varying. Yes, Cadmus, the legendary founder of Cadmea, or Thebes in Boeotia. All right. Well, as far as the future live episode go, I have not decided on the topics yet, so feel free to leave suggestions in the comments. What would you like to see done in the live program in the coming weekend? And as for the regular WanaxTV programming, it will resume soon. We will have the big Etruscan documentary, 2 hours long, the greatest WanaxTV project yet. And after that is released, which will be in the second half of the next month, in the second half of October, hopefully. That is the current plan. So after the Etruscans are released, we will go back to the regular WanaxTV episodes, the 15-minute episodes on very interesting topics that I already have planned. I will not reveal them yet, so you will have to stay tuned to find out. With that being said, thank you very much for joining tonight. We had very good viewership. I'm happy with that. Luis Aldame says, obscure topic, Ausonis or South Italians pirate raiding of Mycenaean Greece. Well, that is an obscure topic, to be honest. I would have to do research, probably heavy research on that. Suspect those Ausonis could be Washish of the Sea Peoples. Could be. I mean, there's zero evidence on who the Washish were. The only reference to them is Washish of the sea. So they have connection to the sea from the Egyptian point of view. And that's the only thing that we know of the Washish. They are the least well recorded when it comes to all of the sea peoples in the Egyptian sources. All right. Well, once again, thank you everybody for coming, for joining us live. Make sure to check our other content, our previous live episodes. Make sure to check some of our regular episodes, which it's been more than a month since we have published, I believe, History of the Brigis and Origins of the Minoans before that. And with that being said, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much and have a good night.